So sort of he was called outside the pub. Someone's tried to hit him with an axe, missed. Someone else in our company, which I got accused of being me, stuck a big 12-inch carving knife in the side of him, which went straight into his side and narrowly missed his heart. Listen, I'm as good as the next man standing in front of me. If a man's prepared to do something to me, I'm not going to just stand there and let it happen. I'm very capable of fighting. Listen, anyone who knows me knows I can fight, but I've got some very, very big, powerful friends. But listen, anyone's going to come and stab me, I'm capable of stabbing that person. Someone's going to shoot me, I'm capable of shooting that person. So, it's like the old saying, kill or be killed. But no, one of the brothers and me had an altercation. I was with Patsy Brindle, the Brindle family. I was with him and a guy called Peter Welsh, whose dad was Bobby Welsh from the Great Train Robbery. We was in a little pub, Le Rascasse, where a lot of fights have gone. Funny enough, a lot of very well-known gangsters have had fights in there. And we was in there one night, this guy's coming and pulled a blade out. And I thought, I had something with me, I wasn't worried. Then he's gone off. He was worried because of the crowd I was in. A few weeks later, I was seeing him driving down the road in Beckenham High Street. Next thing you know, bang! All of those bang. So what he'd done is he'd driven round in his Merc Jeep, and he hit me about 30 miles an hour. So I've gone up about 15 foot in the air. So I'm on the floor, but I've got up, and as I'm trying to smash the window, he's got out the side, and they thought there was gunshots had gone off. So he'd done a runner. Next thing you know, there was a helicopter there, which was trying to take me in these on a stretcher because they said I had internal bleeding because I've been hit. They saw the CCTV. So he went on to the run. He went on to the run. But again, like these so-called wannabe gangsters, there was a letter put into the court before the judge, and he got 6 months in jail. And when I think back, I really wish I would have stabbed him to death that night, that guy. But the thing is, then I would have probably been locked or detained up as a child bloody murderer.
Is that the first time you spoke about the abuse today?
Never spoke about it before anyone else, so it's exclusive for Sean Atwood. I kept seeing, like, shadow people in the house.
What?
Apparently it was a dad saying he didn't want me in the house. I was in the bath one morning and I was like sitting there, and the next thing you know, there was a shadow standing there. I could see it was a man. I literally jumped out of the bath naked, ran downstairs, grabbed the phone. I thought, who am I going to phone? I was laughing to myself, but I think I couldn't go back upstairs. When I was doing it with the gangsters, listen, these gangsters would get out of Rolls Royces and Ferraris, and they'd all have their beautiful pinky rings on. They wouldn't have to worry about anyone coming and stealing their watches or rings. They'd sit there and drink. They were gentlemen. Listen, it was like exactly what you see in the film, like The Business. Or this was how we lived. And unfortunately, obviously, that's why, for me, crime is not an option.
No.
And I'd rather be dead than go back to that life or be involved in that in any way, shape or form.
You demanded it. We have brought it to you. Jimmy Tippett Part 2. I'm losing my voice. It's a good job Jen's here. And thank you, haters. I think it's the haters that have got this one going so viral, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Half of the people love him, half of them hate him.
Like Marmite. And
everyone we have on has a hater. And if we listen to the haters, we never have anyone. So that's where it is. Huge thank you for coming back so soon, Jimmy.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Sean.
And we're all going to start with a hard-hitting one today where your mate Tommy was owed 30,000 for ease. And then he came to you, did he, for assistance?
Yeah, well, what happened was we were sort of based in around Bromley, Beckenham at the time. And there was a young guy called Paul, and he'd been working with his Tommy. He'd been taking bits and pieces off him, and the debt had been rising and rising and rising. And me and Paul had always been sort of, we'd had a fight when we was 15, 16. I broke his nose outside the Ramblers Rest pub in Chislehurst. And then from then on, we were like, sort of like enemies on the manor, often on the plot. And then obviously we went on him one day. He lived at his dad's. So we went up to his dad's. We went through, grabbed hold of him and bits and pieces. And then he kept promising to pay. Payment never come. Then he got with a little firm out of Brixton, and he was hanging around with them, thought he was a bit better than us. So one day there was a few of us who all teamed up. It's in the book. And we went up to a place called the Lord Holmesdale in Bromley, which was it's like a little sort of shitty old sort of like old-fashioned pub. So sort of he was called outside the pub. Someone's tried to hit him with an axe, missed. Someone else in our company, which I got accused of being me, stuck a big 12-inch carving knife in the side of him, which went straight into his side and narrowly missed his heart. So with that, he's fallen on the floor. Then another member of our alleged gang sprayed CS gas all over the pub to stop people coming in. But it's to stop them coming out of the pub. It made them come running out of the pub because it's like affected their eyes. So we've all ended up going off. And then I remember the old phone I had. It was 1996, I think it was, I believe. And I had the old Sony Mars bar. Do you remember the old Sony Mars bar phones? and I remember it was ringing and I didn't answer it. And then my mum kept ringing. She went, we just had all the armed police around here looking for you for an attempted murder. So then I was literally on the run. And then I got caught in Bermondsey in a run car. I remember this little Mercedes C180. I was taken back to Tower Bridge police station and I give a dodgy name. I give my mate's bloody name. And what happened was, it was terrible really, but I give his name, 26 of 468, his date of birth. And the police come back to me about an hour later. They went, well, we've got some good news and bad news. The good news is that we now know you're Jimmy Tippett. He said, but the bad news is your friend Paul, his nan's had a heart attack when we kicked the door through looking to the address and the name you give us. So it was like, I was absolutely... But then we were so young and ruthless, Sean, we didn't care. So no, that... And then obviously the papers had hit CS Gas Gang Attack Pub. I'd been on the run in Bermondsey for about 6 weeks before I virtually got nicked. Then obviously I was nicked and charged with attempted murder, Section 18 with intent. And I was in custody for 9 weeks before the kid, given his due, he refused to cooperate with the police. And all charges were dropped and I was released from prison.
So what happened to your friend's nan?
She survived and lived another 20 years. So no, but he ended up a raging alcoholic. But he was Denise Van Outen's first boyfriend. I remember he sold his story to the News of the World about back in the 90s. But no, because all of us had sort of like famous girlfriends in and around Bromley. It was like, but no, the police come to me and said, when we was on that, and they said, we've seen people going to the hospital with baseball caps on and threatening Paul in the hospital bed. But no, it's everyone in sort of Bromley knows the story. But that was Tommy never got his money back. Paul went on to get into boxing and try and be a bit of a harder man than he was.
Were you fazed with that charge, attempted murder at that age?
Not at all. That's the thing which is worrying, because you have no... I think I was so coked up and so going out with all these boys, and you're part of a dangerous little crew, and there was the biggest names in that little crew in South London. They run South London. And it's like, nothing fazed me then, Sean. This is that's what's dangerous. Because that kid could have died that night, and then that would have meant me going from maybe at worst a 5 to a 6 to a 7, or to an IP to like a life sentence with a tariff, and that's all in the. This is what these kids now. I heard a story the other day. Some 2 kids had a row, one kid stabbed the kid, he's died. So that night, if they wouldn't have had that fight, 2 kids now doing 26 wrecks over someone getting killed, over a useless bloody argument.
It's ridiculous.
So there's something you wanted to talk about then that you've not talked about before, and because of the nature of it, we have to warn the viewers it's going to be harrowing, and also we've got a legal requirement on this channel. Before you can say these things, do you waive your anonymity?
Yeah, of course I do, yeah.
And this is what happened to you at age 11, was it?
I feel that obviously I was going to mention this in my books, but obviously my mum and dad was alive at the time, and I didn't want to bring, well, not shame on the family, but it's a very, very bad episode what happened in my life. Obviously at 11 years old, I would say I was a nice boy. I used to play with little Star Wars figures. We had our Yorkshire Terriers. We had horses. We had a lovely little life. I hadn't experienced anything bad in life. I'd been sheltered from everything, like wrapped up in cotton wool. And my dad ended up doing some business with a very, very, very rich guy, and he had like a very young girlfriend, and they had a big mansion, and my dad was doing business with them. And we'd been out. We ended up flying out to Portugal. They had a big mansion in Portugal, so we was out in Portugal, and then we remember being in a car, and this guy touched me in a way that it wasn't normal, but because being 11 years old, you're going through puberty, you don't know what's going on in your head, and it affected me more than you could ever possibly know, because it got to a stage where I saw this money, and it's like, I don't want people to think because I'm a flash fucker, but it wasn't. Because you see this guy driving like Lamborghinis and having a great big mansion. As an 11-year-old boy, because your mum and dad haven't told you, you don't know what's wrong and what's right sometimes. And this is how children are caught at a certain age. And obviously it went, and then one day I remember he had some Rottweilers, and they just had a puppy. And my mum, and I really, really wanted a Rottweiler. And I said, Mum, I could have a puppy. And they went, why don't he stay over? And I said, no, Mum, no, I don't want to stay over, don't want to stay over, don't want to stay over. We was at his big mansion down in Essex. I said, no. My mum went, yeah, and we'll pick you up tomorrow. I went, no. I was remember really, really adamant that I didn't want to stay. And she was like, and I remember thinking, I hate you because I sensed something was going to go wrong. And I was in one of these rooms and they had these like lockable, you know, like where you lift the latches up on the doors. And I remember sort of putting an elastic band and I remember him and the girlfriend come in and try to do things to me. Him and the girlfriend, who was like a young sort of like, she was like a Swedish girl, very, very pretty, beautiful. But it was like really weird. But I mean, I remember there was like some sort of ceremonial sort of like swords or like little knives on the wall. I was trying to get one of them. And I remember fighting with all my heart, but it was like the worst night of my life. And for me, as an 11-year-old boy, and then to hear my dad weeks later say, oh, yeah, I was like always earwigging at the door, you know, like, and I was sitting there and I remember Dad going, yeah, so I won't say his name because it could still be a criminal matter. And he went, yeah, so-and-so's asked me to go down there. And he's asked me to bring a thing, meaning a shooter. And my dad didn't really, well, he did get involved in everything, but he went, I'm going to get Lee, which was my dad's stepson, to take it down. And I remember my dad coming back late that night and my mum, this is something I don't trust about him. It's like he's half tried to get me nicked. He said, because when I'm driving down in my car, he said, the police have come on me on the motorway all over my car. He said, but the thing was in the other car. But then when we got down to his gaff, he wasn't there and come out with an excuse, blah, blah, blah. He said, no, there's definitely something hooky here. So it's like he'd trying to get my dad nicked because he thought I was maybe going to say something to my dad. So I never delayed this information, and then what happened was this guy ended up going, just vanishing, and it was like a relief. But then after that at school, Sean, I went from being a real good-natured kid. I wasn't really into fighting and bits and pieces, but then I remember having a fight at school once, and this kid, he got the better of me. He was about 4 years older. I thought, no, I was festering all classroom, but I know I'm going to get this kid. I waited after school and it was like a broken half house brick. I waited and I remember smashing him to pieces with this house brick. But my mum was she had a little Suzuki Jeep and she parked up. So she was like shocked to see like me, like this little curly-haired, blue-eyed boy doing this like damage to somebody. And it was like, but I remember now, that was all what was stemming from then. And I believe what happened when I was 11 did turn me into a naughty boy and did also change my way of, when I left school, getting involved with criminals, drugs, because I would have never touched drugs. I know how strong I was as like that. We used to sit and watch John Craven's Newsround in certain lessons and see the dangers of, and I was totally one of those people who would never get involved, but I did, and I believe that's all down to what happened to me when I was 11. And then obviously when me and my mum, we didn't talk for a lot. We used to have sporadic moments where we wouldn't talk. She was a very strong lady. She wouldn't suffer any nonsense. And then when I think I was 26, 27, I'd come out of prison. And she went, nah. She was looking at me with hatred. She went, just how you live your life is just disgusting. She went, drugs and doing this, robbing people, blah, blah, blah. And then she went, and then I went, well, you know something, blah, blah. And I screamed out the person's name and she just looked shocked. And she went, and she showed me a picture with me at that house. And she went, do you know something? I knew there was something. She said, that's that afternoon, isn't it? I went, yeah. She went, and it was like, my mum was seething. I could see she was fuming. She didn't tell my dad because my dad would have just found him and my dad would have, he'd have gone simple as that. But within a few weeks, my mum said, you're never going to guess what happened. We've had some news back from Spain. He's been run over and he's really, really bad. It looks like he's not going to make it. She said, but it's a face. But it was like, my mum was capable of extreme, but she knew, remember every gangster would come in that house, and it was my mum's friend, and she was friends with their wives. So yeah, it wouldn't put it past my mum to have done that, but I can't say for sure. But no, it's, but for me now, it's something which I hold very close to my heart. And obviously I've been with a partner who's been through similar stuff, and it gets to the core of your heart. It's a, because it does change your life, and it changes in more ways than one, because it makes you, when you're growing up out of puberty, that fucked my whole childhood up, the way I see it, because you're not sure whether you like boys or girls, because you don't know what's wrong and right, and because they've taken advantage of that's the most special time in your life when you're going through puberty. So for someone to actually do that to me, and everyone thinks I'm flash, I've got the best looking bird, and I'm all this. There's so much more to me. And a lot of people I noticed, I do read through the comments, and a few people said, all we heard about is Jimmy's dad, his dad, his dad this. But I have got a story, and that is my story. But the thing is, obviously having a very famous dad, it's very hard to get out of that shadow. But it's only now that he's died that I'm obviously going into acting. I'm finding some bits and pieces I want to do, and I want to try and help children who've probably been through similar experiences to me, and try and deter them from crime. And because it's not and because you don't know what people are going through at home. And to be true, when I hear some of the stories from other friends, and we've sat and we've had like breakdown, a lot of people have gone through sexual abuse.
It's the root cause of crime.
Well, listen, you hear from very hard men. Look at Lenny McLean, Ray Hill. These people have been through it, and it doesn't mean because you're hard or because you're weak. Listen, some people, these be the closest people to you. Sometimes it's people's own parents.
That's why the government needs to lock these people up, because they just give them little slaps.
But I noticed you said something on the Dodge Woodall one.
Yeah.
It's like they're quick enough to come around and put your door through if they think there's a load of weed growing in the loft.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact that I spoke to somebody who I know. She's a woman. She's a police officer, and she works within this system. When I told her something, I knew that a girl I knew had been sexually abused by her stepfather. She went, "There's nothing we can." I said, "What do you mean? There's nothing you can do?" I said, "I'm telling you." I said, "I've got this recording. What this person's told me." So she went, "Oh no, you can make a thing as a third party." But I said, "You know something? But it's a little child whose life's been ruined because of what someone's done, and I've had this stuff. So, but you work for like," and I was just like. And when I heard that, Sean, to you, that's why I'm so passionate about it. But it did change my life, and it did. But unfortunately, it did turn me. It turned me on the wrong sides, because my sister had never had anything like that, and she ended up becoming. She left school. She was a ruthless child. She was on LSD, drugs, everything. But my mum took her to the side. She ended up with a job working for Barings Bank in Wall Street as a stockbroker. She went right to the top, and she's like now a very, very successful business lady. So. I feel that my life I lost out on with the crime and the drugs and all the wild parties and prison. That was down to the sex. I know that definitely changed my life, because school was never the same for me after that.
And were you aware of any other victims?
No, because I've done due diligence and research on this guy, and it's no point in coming forward now. Obviously, I'm not going to write a book because I ain't got. But it's something maybe I would like to go, and if I can help other children or help people deter them from crime, because no one actually knows what when you're a child, you're innocent, aren't you? You shouldn't have to go. What I went through, and I remember that Saturday night. It's part of you. It's like going to court and standing in front of the judge, Sean. You can relate to this, and it's like and you hear that sound, and it's like echoes around you, and it's like that horrible feeling knowing you're going to go downstairs into that van and off to prison. It's like that night what I went through was like that, but times 100, with a fear factor of like people coming through your door, and it was. And when I think back, I really wish I would have stabbed him to death that night, that guy. But the thing is, then I would have probably been locked or detained up as a child bloody murderer. But my friend was saying to me last night, funny enough, a girl got attacked at a party the other day in York, and the girl stabbed the guy.
Good.
But the girl's now sitting in the woman's part of Durham's prison.
That's pathetic.
On remand, lost her 2 children because as a Section 8 of intent.
The whole system protects the predators. It's
really
pathetic.
does.
It does.
What is more important to the government? Protecting kids and women, or doing drug busts and all this other bullshit, handing out speeding tickets? What is the purpose of the police? There's good cops out there, and they join, and then they get sent these orders from on top. And
they go to go and get arrested and to do people for not wearing a seatbelt, and so they get
revenue generation. There's money in drug arrests.
Of course it is, because then they can do confiscations, POCA, Proceeds of Crime Act.
Yeah.
I love a bit of controversy. And talking about that, you mentioned earlier about the comments on your last podcast.
Well, do you know what it is? I mean, obviously, I did go into the story in about 2019 when I'd done a bit of business with the arseholes in Brighton, Buster. I won't mention his surname, but that's his nickname, Buster. Absolute rat. When I got arrested in the 17th of December, which I believe was set up by another guy called Gareth, another rat. He's definitely not wired up like this one. And he was, so I got arrested. I've done a thing on the phone for you to show you. So they arrested me on the armed robbery. I got remanded in custody to Lewis Prison. Funny enough, you had a guest on called Carlon, the big black guy.
Carlon,
Carlon.
Tiny.
He just messaged me on Instagram the other day. It was good to hear from him, really, actually. Yeah, very intimidating character, but me and him gelled, and he didn't really talk to anyone else apart from me and Lewis. So no, we got on really well. But no, with this guy, he's because I've mentioned him on one of the podcasts. He's got in touch with Liquid Bullet. Told him he was a friend of a very well-known gangster in Essex, which he's not. And a friend of mine called Terry from Canning Town. And they sent me the messages and he went, if you don't take this thing down, because obviously I've exposed him and he's trying to expose things about me which aren't true. And he's messaged Paige and said, oh, he's trying to say about all different girls and things like that. But he's like an obsessed, crazy stalker. He looks like bloody an old version of Ken Barlow, who thinks he's like one of the chaps, but he's an absolute arsehole, you know. But I'm glad that I can get my 5 minutes to fucking say what I want to say. But no, he's trying to cause me lots of problems. But funny enough, a few people on the comments have actually exposed him anyway. He grassed up a guy called Anton, a well-known face in Brighton who's a lifer. Anton went back into prison in 2018 on a recall because obviously being told that he was in... This Gareth said he was in danger of his life. Anton's in prison. I've met him on the landings in Lewis. He went, but your fucking pal's put me out. I said, he's no fucking pal of mine. I said, he's not wired up right. I said, he's a fucking loop. And so then I've got arrested down to the slags in Brighton. They've set me up, went back to prison because they've done a statement to say that I'd broke into a club, held a gun to their head with a big black guy, which wasn't Carlon, but because he was in prison at the time. But I had my money took off me because I still had a benefit figure outstanding. And when I got out, the police said, we now know that it was lies. Would you be able to help us in prosecuting them for perverting the course of justice? I said, no, because why would I? I said, you knew that I hadn't robbed that club. You still told my probation officer that you thought there was a gun involved and you recalled me to prison for that. And I lost 4 months of my life, which was very important. So no, I'm not going to help you. So then this Buster's then told him that he thinks I'm going to go down there. He lives on the marina in Brighton and the police have put all cameras near where his boat was to make him feel safe. But then now, since the podcast, they've now been trying to say that there's a contract on my life and they're going to get me killed. This is the same people who went to the police and then obviously it showed this is where obviously these podcasts, it blows out.
Because some of the comments were calling you a grass, for example. What would you say to that? What would be your response?
This was all down to Gareth saying that he was putting a bit of paper out saying that someone who got killed. Listen, there was a story. Somebody got shot dead at a party. The guy shot him from behind in the head. He was unarmed. What would that... So if somebody... Just say, I mean, because it's a legal case I'm not allowed to talk about, but if, say, somebody did give evidence in that case, well, someone's gone into a party, Sean, and you're with your friend and he's got shot in the head from behind, sure, is that a nice person? No. If you kill somebody from behind and they're unarmed and you're crazy, there's always this why people speculate about something. People are quick to say someone's this, or... I mean, look at Dave Courtney. They slag Dave Courtney off. He's a grass. But who is he, grass? No, people are very quick to throw that word about. And there is no honour amongst thieves. I said this on the Dodge Woodall podcast. There is absolutely no honour amongst thieves. When I was in Belmarsh, have you ever been in Belmarsh?
No.
You got, where you have the visits, you got it's like a big circle. So you have your ACAT visits and they close the curtains. When I was on the ACAT unit, sorry, not the ACAT unit, the House Block 4, which predominantly all the ACATs were on. I saw a good proportion of London's major villains having visits with police officers and then the curtains were getting drawn. And they'd just come off the book or come out the unit. And then one day I remember one face, I'm not going to mention his name, he went, oh, Jim, I was only meeting that guy, blah, blah, blah. You know, like, I thought, listen, so I've seen it with my own eyes and we hear the stories and we know what goes on. But so that's, so that one.
Yeah, well, of course.
He was only meeting him because he was bringing him a pizza.
Yeah,
of course.
And he happened to be going up for an appeal at the time.
I mean, it's good to get negative comments sometimes because it obviously ups the algorithm. But
yeah, of course it does. Yeah. Listen, but they're keyboard warriors, aren't they? I would reply to each and every one of them, but you know, I haven't got the time. And the ones who write out the most are obviously jealous haters and...
Because there was a few, and I'm sorry if it's sensitive
Go on,
subject to
course.
ask, was regarding, they said that you are just repeating your father's story.
Well, this is my story, which I'm saying. It's
Exactly.
my story along the way. And obviously, I can't help having the dad who I've had. He's opened a lot of doors, but also closed a lot. It's obviously, my dad doesn't wake me up and change my clothes. I live my own life each and every day. He's helped me a lot in life, but he's also made me stumble a lot.
Exactly.
And obviously, I would never, ever hold what happened to me with the sexual abuse against my parents, because they would never, ever to know what happened. And I think my mum did feel an awful lot of blame throughout her later years because of what happened, because she saw that my life had ruined. But obviously, since my mum's died, I've become a stronger person. And now it's my time to fully live my life.
And would you say that, I was just looking at your notes then, that led to the depression and effects on your mental health?
Yeah, 100%. I think it was a long times in prison. I mean, and this was a lot in the 90s. You didn't have TVs and everything what they got now. You had battery radios, and when the batteries run out, that was it. You had to wait until canteen day and go and get your batteries. But no, I think, and it's the come down of the drugs, and it's your emotions are running all over it. So, I mean, my certain things happen. My dog died once, and she was the love of my life, my dog, my Rottweiler. Didn't really cry, because I didn't want to cry. It was like my emotions were totally... and that's why I suppose I was doing the bad things I was doing, because you have no empathy. You've got no emotion to what you're doing.
It's a defense, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a defence mechanism, yeah.
So it won't happen again.
And and it's so, that's what... And people don't realise, I mean... I've seen a lot of people take overdoses and kill themselves, hang themselves, and it's horrific. But people don't get, as you said, they don't get the help they need.
We just watched a really sad movie about it, didn't we? Do you
Yeah.
remember what that was called? It's about a care home, wasn't it? Was it in Wales or somewhere?
It was in Essex.
Essex, was it?
Yeah, it was somewhere in East London.
And the guy was a bouncer. He grew up and he became a bouncer, but most of his mates who got abused in the home killed themselves. It was really sad, wasn't it?
Abuse.
But there's a lot of
serious
stuff
abuse.
what goes on, what people don't understand, Sean. And it's only sort of like, I mean, obviously I've had a police officer reach out to me who's quite high up in West Yorkshire, and has asked me to work with children in schools and bits and pieces. And to be honest, I would do that, because it's giving something back, and it's positive. I'm trying to distance myself with everything negative in my life now, because there's too much negativity out there. And obviously, when I see the comments on these, and you think, have people really got the time to go for... I mean, I remember saying something about my dad and James Cagney, so I went, no, it was 1973. I'm like, I'm sorry, I got 4 years out. You're asking me a question. I'm not going to sit there and pause. I'm trying to give you as much content as I can and say, well, it happened in such and such a date. My dad wasn't a liar. Everyone knows who my dad was. It's unfortunately, I've been there, seen it, got the T-shirt and written the book. And now I'm telling my stories on the podcast.
That happens a lot with people. It's so long ago, they say the wrong year. And the comments are like, look, he's a liar. He said, his entire story must be made up.
My mum was counting some money out and shit. But the thing is, I said, it's about £500,000. Well, it probably wasn't. It was probably about £2.5 million. But I don't remember how much was there. All I remember is that when I went to school about 7:45, she was counting $100 bills, and she was still counting them at bloody 4 o'clock when I got home. So I can't remember exactly what money was there. But these people that go, oh, no, it could have been true because it was so-and-so.
Busybodies.
But no.
Before you start, you also mentioned, obviously, you're working with the police, but you mentioned something about a stalker.
This is this Gareth, the guy from Brighton. He got moved police protection over to Kent. Absolute. He's not quite wired up right, but he's been messaging Paige, been messaging everyone on my social media. But what he doesn't realise is I've got a lot more followers and a lot more supportive friends than he has. So obviously, I ruined him on the Liquid Bullet podcast and exposed him for when he grassed Anton up. But obviously, Anton spent 18 months in jail, but he's not a nice person either. So, but he still don't deserve to. He told the police a lie. They both had a fight. They said it was like handbags at dawn in bloody Brighton. Two fucking kids not capable of holding their hands up. And then obviously, then he's went and grassed him and said he's in fear of his life. Sussex police moved him down to Kent, somewhere in Broadstairs. Then he's working as a barber, like earning £10 a cut. When there's me out enjoying my life, going bloody here, there, and everywhere with all the beautiful girls. He's like one of those geezers sitting there seething like some old bloody sad sod.
Jealous.
Oh, jealousy is like it pours out of every pore of him. He's one of those sort of people. If you're sitting in a bar, he'll walk off with someone's bar, drink because he can't. He's like an old miser, can't spend a penny.
I must admit, I do look at your Instagram and I see all your posts are very glamorous. You go to some really top-notch places around London.
But that's what life's about. It's about having memories. And the thing is, I'd rather die the poorest man in the graveyard, but with plenty of memories. Yeah.
I like that.
So in Belmarsh then, who was Bobby Gold and what was it like having him as a cellmate?
Bob was Charlie Cray's co-defendant. Bob was the one who handed the cocaine over to the police. Bob was lovely. But Bob had just come off. Bob was nicked with Ronnie Fields and Charlie Cray. He'd been on the AA Cat unit. So in 1997, he'd just been moved over to normal location. So me and Bob, so I remember he was showing me his paperwork for the case and stacked up to here. And even he said, Charlie's problem was that night at the party, Charlie's thing was to try and get a monkey out of someone. You know, like then Charlie could pull his monkey out and like buy the drinks and look the part for the night. But Charlie was never a drug dealer. He was never nothing like that. He was the most biggest gentleman you could ever meet, Charlie. But Bob was the one who went and bailed the couple of kilo of Charlie. Him and Ronnie, and then so they was out of pocket anyway, but they were just trying to do it to try and have them over for some money, but then it ended up fucking failing and it ended up being police. But sorry, while we're on the subject of that, I had a comment from Veronica Richardson, Charlie Richardson's wife. I've gone up with Charlie, and obviously I mentioned a comment which she took to a bit of heart, and I did say that I would apologise. Obviously, I said all gangsters are leeches, you know, like and blah blah blah, and so no, that could have been put out the wrong way. When I meant that, I meant a lot of the younger gangsters. With Charlie Richardson, I'd just like to reiterate. He was very very good to me. Charlie, he was like a second dad. He'd done an awful lot for me. If ever I was if ever I had a problem, Charlie would always back me up. And obviously Veronica, I know very very well, and her son Lee, who passed away quite a few years ago, he was very, very good friend to me and looked up to me. So I would just like to say that, no, I didn't mean that with meaning Charlie Richardson. Charlie Richardson got the utmost respect for, and he was very, very fond of my dad. And no, I've got a lot of respect for Charlie, and I never thought or was meaning anything like that.
What was the beef between Soldier and Johnny about in Belmarsh?
Well, Johnny had grassed me up, this Johnny Johnson. He was a well-known grasser from South London. And he'd set me up that morning when I got nicked on the bit because he knew I was wanted for the attempted murder. And I was also in the ringed car at the time. So Soldier was he was a black guy from Brixton. When I went to bring Johnny onto the landings, we was in House Block 3, which was called Beirut because you never had any pillars. It was like a war zone. Johnny saw me at the bars and tried to think, but then Soldier was trying to grab him and pull him into the like showers there and give it to him. But that was just like, this was the 90s and it was like wild in there.
So we're based in Surrey, in Guildford.
Yeah.
And you hit up the sleepy village of Farnborough at one point, didn't you?
Farnborough?
Yeah, there was a safe. You were dating a bird called Jessica, and she said...
Oh, that's Farnborough in Kent.
Oh, Kent.
Yeah. That's near Alpington, near Bromley.
Okay.
Near Bromley, yeah.
So how did that robbing go down then?
Oh, that was quite a long time ago. We got nicked for that. The two guys I sent in to get this safe have put it on like the trolley, what you use to get the safe.
Yeah.
They went to put it into a car, but the car was so old, the safe fell straight through the chassis and ended up on the floor. So they've had to leave the car there and do a run up. And then obviously all the DNA in the car. It was like the fucking Keystone Cops. It was like, this is when you're young. Some things go off, but some things don't. Remember, so my godfather owned a scrap metal yard called the King of Lee and Lucian. Yeah. So we used to get loads of stolen cars, and each day we'd be going there, we'd get 100 quid a car. So the more cars we got, sometimes people would be seen shopping, jump straight in the car and just drive straight to the scrapyard, put it straight through. And I was getting whenever I was skin, I would just go around robbing cars because I would go and get I could go and put 20 cars in a day. But as soon as you got 6-7 cars, you got these 700 quid there, you'd be able to play, you'd be out drinking and partying, and then it'd be but we were constantly just robbing, constantly nicking anything we could.
And we got the Frank Shannon swindled Nissan.
Yeah, no, because some people were putting about the Queens, about the guy I mentioned. The guy whose name was Michael Telling, who cut his wife's head off. His name was Michaal Telling. So obviously a lot of people say, that story don't add up. Well, his name was Michael Telling. He was sole heir to the Dewhurst Butchers chain. And he was obviously something to do with the Queen. But at the time, there was another guy in there called Frankie Shannon who had swindled Nissan out of 55 million. But he was the one I told you, he'd done
55 million?
55 million. This is back in 1993.
Did he get nicked?
Yeah, he was in Ford prison. I mean, these are all the people. There was Ronnie Knight's son who was in there at the time. Ronnie had his illegitimate son there, Graham Knight. There was Eddie Berry, a fighter out of a sort of Bromley way, who was a well-known face. You had Jimmy Holmes, another big face from Brixton there. There's some big names there at the time.
Yeah.
So we've got loads of questions coming from the viewers. SJ wants more Lenny McLean stories.
More Lenny McLean stories, right?
Yeah.
Lenny, well, Lenny used to go up Shapes Gym, which was owned by Reg Parker, his promoter. So with Lenny, I'd always go up there. But Lenny, I remember even as a kid when I first went up the Thomas and Beckett, I was about 12 when I first went up there with my dad, and it was all the hard men, Nosher Power, you had Columbo, you had Ray Hill up there. My dad's friends, Eddie Richardson would come up there. And for me, it was the best thing was up there. I was more fascinated with him, but there was a guy, Adam West, who played the Batman in the 60s.
West.
He was dating a woman called Beryl Gibbons, who was the publican at the pub, and she was one of Britain's first boxing managers. So she was having an affair with Adam West. And he was in the bar one day, and I was like, oh my God, Dad, it's like Batman, it's Batman. But then obviously you go upstairs and you got Lenny, who's like the fucking Hulk, and I'd be like sitting there and go, right, Jim, no fucking slouching here, son, put those gloves on. And the gloves, I remember, were so sweaty, and I'm OCD, and they would stink, and they go, right, get them laced up, get on that bag, come on, I want to see you punch that bag, I want 200 punches. And I'd be sitting there thinking, you'd have to wait for this fucking clock to go, like the time bell go round again before it rung, and he'd go, no slouching, and he'd sit there watching it. But no, Lenny was a larger than life character, but obviously whenever he was on the doors in London, always looked after me. If not so, he fucked me nights up, because obviously he wouldn't let me he'd go, you're not hanging around with them Herberts, come and sit in here, get me a bottle of champagne, and he'd take me all the way home after, take me to Forest Hill. I remember in Forest Hill, South London, we'd go and have like a steak and chips or something, or a kebab or something, and he'd sit there and he'd eat, oh God, he'd go on, give us another bit of slice, give us another slice, don't be fucking shy. He was like mad, he could just, but he didn't drink. So he'd have a can of 7-Up with it. It's quite funny. Like he'd have his lemonade or something with it. It was like, so you see my dad, he was always out on the piss, but then he didn't drink.
Did you see him in action?
I've saw him grab people, and I've seen him hit the bag up the Beckett and that, and he's quite a powerful powerhouse. But his son Jamie had a heart attack the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw it. It was on social media. Apparently, he'd just come out of the gym and his heart stopped. Went over the steering wheel of his car, but a passerby found him and done CPR on him. But up until about a few weeks ago, he was in intensive care. Yeah.
Oh shit!
Oh, shit. Unfortunately.
Yeah. So I hope he gets better.
He's also added here about Lenny McLean in Lockstock.
Well, Lenny was in Lockstock with my dad's friend. My dad's best friend is a guy called P.H. Moriarty, who played Hatchet Harry.
Hatchet Harry.
Yeah, so Paul was my dad's, well, up until the day my dad died on the 20th of October 2016, Paul used to visit him every single week. And I remember once there was a guy manhandling my dad in the care home in Bickley, and Paul grabbed hold of him, and he had a glass eye, Paul. And what happened was he was on a building site years ago, and a hook went straight into his thing. He just done the film Scum with Ray Winston. He played the prison officer. And then he went on to do Long Good Friday, we played Razors, and he'd done Jaws 3. And he'd done like a few, but Paul's still alive now. He's just done the Rise of the Foot Soldier film as well.
Oh, there's another one out.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think I've watched one. They're not my sort of films.
So when was Lockstock filmed?
Lockstock was filmed all around the borough in South London. And that was filmed, if we go near Borough Market, where they had the cab station and all that, that was all filmed around the borough, but that was 1996.
How accurate was that with how life was?
It was a comedy. It was a comedy, wasn't it? But the card game is like, because my dad obviously had things called spielers, and they're illegal gambling clubs where people play kaluki, podka, and they wouldn't pay the tax on their bets back then, because the tax is all done now, aren't they? So they would take the rather than go to a betting shop where you'd have to go and pay your tax extra, they would take all the bets at the spielers. So you'd have all the people from the market and all the people would come up playing cards and losing all their money. And my dad obviously run the spiel, so he'd take his house money, and he liked playing cards himself. And then obviously my dad done a film called Number One, which was with Bob Geldof, Ray Winston, and they filmed at my dad's spieling, and it was all around Lewisham. But the film became a bit of a flop but it was like similar to Lockstock, but there was Bob Geldof in it, Alfred Molina, who played Octopussy in Spider-Man, Alison Steadman, Ian Jury, Mel Smith, Phil Smith. There was Eric Richards from The Bill. It was like big, massive like cast, but the film just sort of flopped.
I mean, that's a good cast, yeah. How did it flop?
Some great people. Well, I'll send you the link to it, but it's called Number One. It was made in 1986. It's set around Lewisham, which is like where I was brought up.
Was that before or after your dad had the situation in the restaurant with Bob Geldof?
That was with Rod Stewart.
Rod Stewart.
My dad was good friends with Bob. My dad became good friends with Bob Geldof.
Okay.
Although he said he was a bit tight.
What about David Bowie? Was he in the mix?
No, he wasn't in the mix. No, Ian Jury.
Oh, I loved Ian Jury.
He had polio, didn't he? From Ian Jury in the Blockheads. Yeah.
He plays a
villain in it. He plays a villain in it. Yeah. He's got a really unusual voice, but he was a great character.
So yeah, how was Bob Geldof? Was he?
Yeah, he was
quite
nice.
Calm?
Yeah, he was like, because remember he's around all these bloody thugs, and he's like, then my dad's friend was there, but a guy called Bobby Ramsey who used to be with the Cray twins, and then you had Paul Moriarty, P.H. Moriarty, who was also in it. He played Mike the Throat, so he didn't speak properly in it. But no, it was as a kid, I was going up there watching them all film it and all that. And it was great fun.
So we've got another question from SJ here. Do you have any stories about Mike Reed, R.I.P.?
No, my dad. Oh yeah, sorry, I do. My dad was telling me years ago when he went in. My dad knew Mike Reed because my dad had a club called the Studio in a place called Sydenham, and he'd met Mike and he took him over to meet the Cray twins one time over in East London. And my dad said Mike was getting all like cheeky and bravado as he did, and he was telling a joke. And Ronnie Cray went to glass him with his whiskey or his brandy, what he was drinking. My dad sort of grabbed Ronnie's wrist and said, "Oh, you can't do that. He's with me." And my dad said, with Ronnie, you could see that he really, really was pissed off that my dad had grabbed him and was telling him no, because people didn't do that to Ronnie Cray. But my dad said after that night, he said, "Sonny, I'm not the parent spark out." He said, "But he said, I had to sit there and watch him all night because he's the sort of person who would try to do something after or do it from behind." He said, when Reggie you could talk to, Reggie was lovely. And Charlie was just a gentleman. But with Ronnie, he was on so much medication and he could switch at any time. My dad said, I didn't feel right with Ronnie round him.
Wow. Next question is from Red Shaper. Stories about the gangster Eugene Carter.
I wouldn't say Eugene was a gangster, but no, Eugene's uncle was a guy called Johnny Carter. And Johnny Carter was a stereotype gangster. If you look at the Valentine's Murder Squad or whatever, he wouldn't go out a row on, like with all like Meyer Lansky's and all the Bugsy Siegels, always immaculately dressed, trilby out on, scars all over his face. But he was a cuts man. He used to use the old fashioned, like the Sweeney Todd razor and cut people. But him and Frankie Fraser were like known for they used to fight every time on Tuesday. They're both out of the similar areas, but they're famous for their knife fights. But Eugene was obviously Johnny Carter's brothers. I think it was Billy Carter. I think it was Billy Carter. I'm not too sure, but it was his son. Eugene got, like a lot of London gangsters in the 80s, got very rich through Brinksmack money. So the Brinksmack money was lent out, and a lot of it didn't get paid back. And obviously, so they was using that to get into the drug game. So Eugene became very, very big in the coke game. He used to, funny enough, come up to Liverpool and to get most of his coke up in Liverpool. And then obviously, my dad had a lot of big friends up in Liverpool, so we'd run into each other quite a lot. But no, Eugene became a big player in the coke game in London. He dominated it.
I wanted to know, throughout your life, what is the most dangerous situation you've been in?
I've been in a few dangerous situations. Quite a few I can't really mention on here because I would incriminate other people.
What's the most dangerous one you can mention?
There's a family of brothers. I'm not going to mention the name. I'm entitled to, but I won't because I haven't got any respect for them. But no, one of the brothers and me had an altercation. I was with Patsy Brindle, the Brindle family. I was with him and a guy called Peter Welsh, whose dad was Bobby Welsh from the Great Train Robbery. We was in a little pub, Le Rascas, where a lot of fights have gone. Funny enough, a lot of very well-known gangsters have had fights in there. And we was in there one night, and this guy's come in and pulled a blade out. And I thought, I had something with me, I wasn't worried. Then he's gone off. He was worried because of the crowd I was in. Then we've had a set to over this girl's caused some problems. And then a few weeks later, I was seeing him driving down the road in Beckenham High Street. And I'm like, fucking wanker, you're a fucking mug, you cunt. And then obviously, I'm walking towards a church now in Beckenham. Next thing you know, bang! All of those bang. So what he'd done is he'd driven round in his Merc Jeep, and he hit me about 30 miles an hour. So I've gone up about 15 foot in the air. But what stopped me is this is mad. So it's right by a church, and there's a big there's like a thing with the sign is the two poles. Well, the car's gone in and literally folded up. Now, Merc Jeep, brand new ML Jeep, has folded up. So I've been hit. So I'm on the floor, but I've got up. And as I'm trying to smash the window, he's got out the side and they thought there was gunshots had gone off. So he'd done a runner. Next thing you know, there was a helicopter there which was trying to take me in these fucking on a stretcher because they said I had internal bleeding because I've been hit. They saw the CCTV. So he went on to the run. He went on to the run. But what it was, he went, I'm going to burn your mum's house down. I'm going to burn your mum's house down. I went, yeah. So some woman's heard that. She went, I'm not allowed to. So this woman's gone and made a statement to the police and said that this guy said blah, blah, blah. So I supported that because there's no way no one's going to threaten to burn my mum's house down when my dad's dying of dementia in an old people's home. You just don't do that. I'm not worried about him running me over because there's times that he couldn't do it mano to me, or he couldn't do it from the front of me. He had to do it from behind. So and then when they took me back to King's, I think I was at the hospital near Herne Hill. I can't remember if it's King's College. I'm not sure what it's called. But I had about 16 armed police officers there, all fucking with guns, and they're all sitting there because they was thinking he's going to come back and try and shoot me.
When we wake up in the morning, we get out of bed and we start our day with Coro Snacks. Coro is a healthy snacks brand focusing on bringing additive-free, natural ingredients to their customers with fair prices in bulk packaging. They have everything from nut butters to free from baking ingredients to cooking essentials and, of course, the snacks. And the energy balls are delicious.
They're my favourite, the salted pistachio.
Ooh.
Can't wait to have this morning.
Let's see what this one tastes like.
Cheers.
Cheers. So what makes Coro special in comparison to others? Their bulk packaging allow them to offer their customers high quality products at a fair price. For a 5% discount on Coro's products, use the code TRUECRIME with no space in between true and crime. The link to Coro's online shop is in the description box on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor.
And then he got picked up 6 months later. But again, like these so-called wannabe gangsters, there was a letter put into the court before the judge, and he got 6 months in jail. So, Sean, this is what I'm saying. This is why I'm not going to get involved in these tit for tat. But no, that's what happened, and everyone knows what happened. But he couldn't come on me like that. Oh, then sorry, he burnt me. Then there was another problem. So he burnt my ex-girlfriend's car outside. They put a hand grenade on it. The car just gone straight up and burnt to a cinder. But that was like meant to be some sort of thing to me. But
So they did that outside her house?
Yeah, outside where we lived, yeah.
How long ago was that?
This was in 2004. It's before my book came out.
Oh my God.
So this is all about the time of the book coming out. This is why the book has got to be revised edition and say the bits and pieces.
So what was her attitude towards her car getting hand
Went
grenaded?
fucking mental. And then his girlfriend turned up at the pub and Jackie smashed her to pieces. And because Jackie could proper fight. Jackie literally annihilated his girlfriend. Jackie used to frighten me. Sometimes I'd be holding the door. She'd go, come home now. But Jackie just annihilated his girlfriend. Oh no, sorry. That's what happened. Jackie annihilated his girlfriend outside the pub. Then they done the car.
Right.
But the way I saw it, Sean, listen, it's like, that's why, listen, there's no honour amongst thieves. Never has been, never will be.
I've got another generic question for you here. Have you genuinely feared for your life at any point?
No, because I think that when you go, you go. Listen, I'm as good as the next man standing in front of me. If a man's prepared to do something to me, I'm not going to just stand there and let it happen. I'm very capable of fighting. Listen, anyone who knows me knows I can fight, but I've got some very, very big, powerful friends. But listen, anyone's going to come and stab me, I'm capable of stabbing that person. Someone's going to shoot me, I'm capable of shooting that person. So, it's like the old saying, kill or be killed.
Exactly.
The law's crazy though, isn't it? If someone comes to kill you and you use excessive force on them, then you get sent down.
Well, that's what I did. That's what happened with me at the party. I had with the bodybuilder, which the guy said on the comments. So he kept repeating the story. But sometimes you can't help repeat the story because they're part of what you're telling. You're telling a certain thing.
Someone comes to kill you, you should be allowed to kill them.
Is that
But
still
no,
the
do you know,
case?
no. The thing is now, Sean, which is lucky. Do you know what it is now? There's so much phone evidence. There's so much CCTV. If someone really wants to kill me, I'm at the end part of my life anyway, so to speak. And I've had a better. If I was to drop dead of an heart attack now, I've had a better life than anyone could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've got the cherry on the top. But listen, they want to go and put themselves in prison for 30 years. You know yourself, listen, all these gangsters all in America, they've got a contract on them, listen. They're all still, you've got Sammy the Bull on bloody podcasts every day. Look, who's ever done anything to him?
We've got a documentary coming out of him.
Have you?
On Discovery.
I like him. He's a good character.
He's a good storyteller.
But when you think what John Gotti was going to do to him,
Yeah. That's his side of it, isn't
and
it?
John Elite, he's a good friend of mine. John's been over to see me in Mayfair.
Yeah, me and Wildman interviewed John Elite years ago.
Did you?
Yeah. That was one of our best ones.
Yeah, no, John's a good friend of mine. Yeah, he came over. We had a good night out one night, me and John.
Yeah, he's the part, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so the next question is then from... Oh, this is from Red Shaper again. He's asking for what happened on your night out with James Lawson.
I know James Lawson.
You've never heard of James Lawson?
No.
Right, okay then. We've got a question from Paul Wilkins TV show. He's on about TV show Gold and the men involved.
Yeah, no, funny enough, I watched it last night.
Yeah.
It was
What's
actually...
that?
It's about the Brinksman robbery. Because obviously Mickey McAvoy was a good friend of my dad's.
Yeah.
Brian Robinson, the two main characters, were very good friends of my dad's.
Yeah.
And obviously I know Tony White, another good friend of my dad's. But I know everybody in the Brinksman. Yeah, I think it's very, very, very good program.
So for the American viewers then, what is the Brinksmat robbery?
The Brinksman robbery was where in 1983 some masked men went to the depot in Heathrow and they didn't expect the gold to be there. They was going after some cash. Because one of the guards had given them Tony Black had given some inside information, but they went there and there was £26 million worth of gold. So they had to arrange to get loads more vans there.
No.
But my dad was meant to have been a key player in this.
Was he?
Allegedly. Yeah,
Allegedly.
allegedly. But it does, yeah. But obviously, we went from living in a 3-bedroom semi-detached house to a 5-bedroom detached student mansion not long after. So, but no, yeah. So no, it was, it was, and it's what carved, I think, South London into the drugs trade and it made a lot of criminals very, very rich.
So if you go prepared for one thing and it's another.
I think that they went there was a couple of £100,000, £400,000 of diamonds and £26 million worth of gold.
So to get the extra weight moved then, what did that take?
Calling family members to get vans over because obviously the weight of the gold.
And did they have to hold people hostage while that was happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they successfully got away with it.
Successfully got away with it.
Wow.
But that killed that. A lot of deaths have occurred from that robbery. It's like they call it the fool's gold, don't they?
A lot of deaths have occurred.
Yeah, of course they have. Yeah, Brian Perry got shot dead.
And what was his role?
He was looking after the money for somebody allegedly.
Some of the money.
Georgie Francis got shot dead. My dad got actually arrested for the Georgie Francis shooting. My dad was in his 70s then.
This is all because some of the money was going missing.
This is because the guys who had robbed the money had entrusted certain friends and colleagues to make sure that money was doing good, but these people was using that money to better their own lives. But it's a great story. I mean, it's a fantastic. I watched it last night. It was really, really,
I'll have to
really
watch
good.
that. Did anyone eventually get arrested for it?
Yeah, well, Brian Robinson, who was my dad's friend, they called him the Colonel. He was Tony Black's brother-in-law.
Yeah.
So he got the information, and then you had Mickey McAvoy, who just recently died. He died on New Year's Day this year.
The guys who got arrested then, did they get away with it for a long time?
A lot of people involved in that got away with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know them very well.
And was this?
I'll send you some. I'll send you some pictures for this.
Was this around the time of the Great Train Robbery?
No, the Great Train Robbery was in the 60s.
60s.
I used to date one of the guy's daughters.
Did you?
I'll send you the picture. Yeah, I'll send you the picture because it's
Just.
It might be in this book. It shows you. It says Jimmy Hussey, the great train robber. His daughter Alex Hussey used to wait outside on my mum and dad's wall where they lived for me to come home. She was like always waiting for me. She was like, oh, she's a lovely girl.
Because that happened so long ago then, for the viewers who are not familiar, what happened with the Great Train Robbery?
That's way beyond my time. That was in the 60s when it was where they robbed the mail. I think it was £2.5 million then, but in the 60s that was like something like fortunes now, isn't it?
Yeah,
but it was a great train. That's a little bit beyond.
And someone died in that one, didn't they?
No, I think they coshed the guard and he sort of
had a heart attack or something.
Died years later. The same day.
It just came to my attention because I was a fan of the Sex Pistols. Then all of a sudden, they had a track with Ronnie Biggs.
Oh, so you like the punks? You like the punks?
My first song I ever bought was Holidays in the Sun.
One of my close friends is a lead guitarist in a group called The Business.
Really?
Yeah, Stevie Whale, yeah. That's one of a very close friend of mine.
The punk era was something else, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so the next question then is from Roger. He wants to know if the government and the authorities get involved with criminals to do certain work. Like, do they hire them to do things? You know, like the CIA
Yeah,
how
yeah.
get involved with the mafia to do hits.
To be honest, I have heard certain things, and when we've, I mean, I got arrested by MI5 when I was young
MI5.
to do with that robbery.
Yeah.
The robbery, and they said that they believed my life to be in danger because my friend Pat was shot dead. And yeah, they've always, police will always offer you, like, they're always going to offer the criminal way out, aren't they?
But do they like the CIA hired a mafia to do hits for them?
Not
Do you ever heard
what
of
I
anything like that? MI5
no.
get some London gangsters to do some dirt for them.
No, and if I had, I wouldn't say because I think I'm too frightened of them coming after me. No, but we all know it goes on.
Yeah,
We all know. Yeah, we know. I think that's at a different level. I think that's with the, when you hear about these guys falling out the windows who are working with the Russians, and it's a little bit. I think that's a little bit too far up the ladder for me.
And have the police ever come to you with an Osmond warning on your life?
No, because someone's put this on a thing. I've never. No, someone put this. I've got 2 Osmond boys. Never, ever have I had the police come to me and said, "There's a woman on your life."
Really?
Never. And then someone on the comments going, "Yeah, he's had 2 Osmond boys." I thought, "Fucking hell, you know more than me." And I'm Jimmy Tippett. I was like, "Fucking hell, you seem to know more about me than I do." But no, never had no Osmond boys. And I'll tell you if I had. Yeah, I'll tell you.
And are you still close with anyone from prison?
Yeah, still close with some friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
But not to the sense, I've got a couple of friends who I stay in contact with. I send them the occasional postal order. They phone me up every now and again. These are actually really, really nice guys who are just in there through their own greed, really. But it's something I've walked away from, that life. But I'd still take these 2 guys I've got in prison, they're really, really nice guys. They are family men, and they've helped me out a lot in the past. So for that reasons, I do sort of stay in contact. And they're these people, they're older men who go to their cell, they don't mix with other people. The majority, sure, you know, what prison is now is like, it's like, you see these videos on TikTok, it's like, you see them sitting there doing their little, their curries in their kettles, and they think they're living life. I thought, fucking, you want to come to Sexy Fish where you got the steam coming out of the big baskets and lobsters and all the fucking everything there. But no, there's no glamour in crime anymore.
So like in America then, you had the old school Italian mafia, then they lost their power, and now we got like the cartels and stuff like that.
I think, it's, to be honest with you, it's the gangsters, and my dad always said this, it's the Irish. My dad had a lot of Irish friends. The Irish are the major players.
In London?
You've got a lot of them because you've got Kilburn, you've got certain areas. But the Irish, and I find with the Irish, they're very, very good to their word. They're the most honourable. And to be honest, a lot of Scousers. The Scousers stick together. Very, very, and the Manx as well. You've got the little crime groups. People always would think the London Mafia, the London things are long gone now. You've got the Albanians, you've got the Iranians, you've got their own Somalians, you've got their own crime groups now. You've got the black gangs. It's not the Longs are like Freddie Foreman and the Richardsons. These families, they're well long gone.
It's got more like America, hasn't it? More.
Yeah, you got listen. Of course, you've got your Turkish groups. You got everyone. Listen, you got the guy on the local council estate who's got 20 people. That makes them a firm, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So do you still live now where you grew up?
No. I'm sort of seeing somebody in Manchester at the moment. So I sort of spend a lot of time in Manchester. I spend time in Leeds. I spend a few days a week in London. I've obviously I've been left some good stuff, so I can manoeuvre where I want to. But in the end, I'll probably move to Dublin.
Yeah,
love Dublin.
And when you returned to your old parts, would you say there was some?
I don't go. I know.
behaviour?
I went to Beckenham where my mum's old house was. I went there last week. Had some breakfast with a friend in his cafe and all that, and it was quite sad because I was thinking of my mum and dad. I was thinking of like all friends and of what's happened over the last 30 years there. But it's life. If you sit and dwell on that, it's going to bring you down. And it's like my mum and dad wouldn't want me to do that. They want me to move on and live my life.
And you mentioned then your dad's new book.
Yeah, I'm signing a contract with Julie this week. So she's a top-selling crime writer in the UK. She's done 20 number one bestsellers. She's like the Martina Cole of Bradford. But no, so we're doing our contracts this week. So that should hopefully be out in the next few months.
Yeah.
How quickly we can get that out, yeah.
Have you had a look at it?
Sorry?
Have you read it?
No. We've got it all together. It's because it's a part. It's more so people telling their stories about my dad. I've sort of she's doing all the hard work. I'm just doing a little bits and pieces. I might just to blow my nose.
Yeah, go for it.
But
yeah.
everyone in the comments say I'm bang on the Charlie again. But
you will definitely. and all of Jimmy's links in the description box, Instagram, etc. If you want to go and stalk him and harass him.
Yeah, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. But
I've got. Did you finish that answering that one? Or?
Yeah.
I've got a question here from Miles. This is a very unusual question. I've never heard of anything like this before. Might have to use this on some other people. Looking back on your life, What scents and smells do you remember, and what stories are associated with them?
Right, that's quite good. That's quite good. Izzy Miyake,
That
believe it or not.
perfume.
Izzy Miyake with the
Yeah.
aftershave. It was like lemony. It had it was like a big rectangle bottle with a big lid.
Yes.
That because it reminds me of the 90s, getting ready to go out and
Not
getting all.
dupe.
No.
yeah,
And then other smells were like Aramis and Kouros, because my dad always used to wear them in the 80s, and I could just remember that we'd be in Marbella, and my dad would be squirting that Kouros, and it just because my dad was always tan and he had like silvery blue eyes, and I remember Kouros being a big scent. And more recently, Molecule 1. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I smelt that one.
My mum
Yeah.
used to wear this, and she would only wear Molecule 1. It works with your hormones.
Pheromones,
Yeah. And this, my mum said, no, don't ever buy me. I only wear Molecule 1. So it is a fact, and I only wear Creed Aventos or Barakat Rouge. So they're the only. So smells do.
Do you not know
Yeah.
Izzy Miyake?
No.
If you smelt a man
It's
with
very
it on,
lemony,
he meant
very
business.
lemony. Did
Yeah,
it?
that night. Yeah. If
We
you smell
normally
in the
did.
club, yeah.
But no, it's fun. That's what an unusual question. That's really
Isn't it?
interesting.
Isn't it?
No, because it is smells, and it's like pie and mash. When I go to a pie and mash place, that's memories for me, because I smell the liquor and you smell the mash, and it's like it is. That's a very unusual question.
I
but
thought you would
very-
have said something nice like bonfires or something.
No,
but
no.
Perfume.
Right, did we do hit on his life? We hit Michael.
Yeah, I've done that one,
Michael
yeah.
telling
Done that
him got
one.
his wife's head off. Shout out to Tiny. We did that.
The Brighton job.
So did you interview Tiny?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tiny was a great guy.
Harlem,
Yeah. Very, very, very intimidating,
His
isn't he?
story was gripping about this war.
Yeah,
he had this war going with another prisoner.
Because he comes from my area, so we're both from SE13. Because when we got linked in Lewis, he went SE13. So everyone, I mean, having him on your side, you wouldn't want anyone else, because he's a big old power unit.
Yeah.
And everyone was just petrified of him on the wing. But me and him just befriended each other because it was SE13. Crazy as a March hair, but no, very interesting character.
Our chair collapsed during the interview.
Did it with him?
Yeah.
We've got,
You don't remember?
we've got a clip where the chair just collapses and we both just hit the ground. We'll have
Yeah,
to send
quite
it. It's
painful.
quite funny.
Send me that. Yeah.
So-
But it's funny when he got in touch with me.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, he got
Were
in
you
touch with me on
surprised?
Instagram. He went, Jim, it's me, Carlo. Do you remember from when we was running HM Lewis? But no, he's funny.
So what would you say is the biggest high point of your life?
The biggest high point, I think the last year really. I've had some great times. Remember, my dad, obviously I met some fantastic and wonderful people. I mean, being engaged to Rachel Roberts, who was my childhood sweetheart. She played Justine Dean in Grange Hill. So to be with her, and I actually used to watch her on the show and really like her. And we was actually then living together. We had like loads of money at the time. We went to St Lucia and got engaged. And I remember we was in the beautiful hotel down there, Hassian Bay, and she had this. I'd got her it was a 4-carat square diamond. And this woman next to her, she went, fucking hell, I'd bend over for a stone like that. Blah. This kid's going, that's my one. And everyone kept coming up to going, I remember you, did you used to go to my school? And I went, she went, if anyone keeps asking me, because she was in Grange Hill, the most popular children's TV show.
Yeah.
Whenever we was out, people go, oh, did you used to go to my school? She went, oh, for fuck's sake, Jim. She went, I hate this bloody thing. But she had a fascinating story. I mean, her dad was murdered the day she started Grange Hill.
No.
Yeah.
Over what?
So this is quite mad. It's quite a good story. So she started Grange Hill in 1988. She did. She was the longest running cast member. I think it was 6-7 years she was in it. So she was. She told me. So her dad. What's his dad's name? Terry Roberts. No, Eddie Roberts. Sorry, Eddie Roberts. He'd gone to the bank in East Croydon. He was a scrap metal dealer. Gone to the bank, come out of the bank, he'd had 10 grand in his pocket. Someone come up and shot him in the head.
No.
So they didn't take the 10 grand, but there was a big thing that she'd always said that the mum was involved in it, or the mum had been hanging or knocking off someone's do the Brinks mat. So this is really it's like really quite interesting story. But when I saw the medium said to me to get away from Rachel. And she said, like, I can tell you now, go home. And because Rachel was in America at the time, I kept seeing like shadow people in the house.
What?
Apparently it was a dad saying he didn't want me in the house. Really mad. Listen, this is... I was in the bath one morning and I was like sitting there, and the next thing you know, there was a shadow standing there. I could see it was a man. I literally jumped out of the bath naked, ran downstairs, grabbed the phone. I thought, who am I going to phone? I was still laughing to myself, but I think I couldn't go back upstairs. I had to go through the washing basket and put a tracksuit on. Went to see a medium called Catherine, who was based in Maidstone. And went up to see her. We got talking. I thought, oh, it's a load of old waffle. You know, this was 2008. So I'm sitting there listening to all this waffle, and I'm thinking, yeah, all right. And then she goes, I've got your nan here, your nanny Maud. I thought, how does she know my nan's name? Then her face started contorting. It was really weird, like going a bit fat like my nan. And she used to wear these thick glasses. I thought, she went, yeah, Rachel's, you got to get away from her. And I went, what? She went, I see you getting knifed in the back.
What?
I went, what? She went, listen, you need to go home, start searching through things, and it's all going to become clear. Went home, started finding little quart bottles of vodka everywhere. So Rachel lived in a beautiful big 4-bedroom house and looked like, it was like we used to call it the white picket fence. So next thing you know, she's come back from America, started rowing. It's on the front page of the Sunday People. School's loud, attacks cop and mum. So she ended up getting nicked for attacking her mum and the coppers one day because we've been rowing. I got mentioned and sort of saying, and then it didn't become just really toxic. But then I believe certain things in this spiritual stuff. She was saying things. She went, you and your nan had the password, because my nan was a bit of a medium herself. And she said, look, do you want me to come and visit you as a ghost if I ever die? I went, no, don't be silly, that frightened me. I said, she went, well, you go to a medium and our password would be Ruby, right? Because she used to wear like a ruby necklace. So when she was there, she went, just to let you know, just so you know it's your nan here, she went, she's got a little password. And if I was to tell you that password's Ruby, what would you say? With that, all the hairs on the back of my neck went up, and I was like, wow. I remember sitting in the car after, my legs were just shaking in the car. And I went back to, my mum was playing cards with my auntie Julie, who was with Freddie Saul, the cop killer. I went, mum, and they went, oh, don't listen to that old fucking waffle. I don't know what you're listening to that old shit for. And they were just more interested in playing cards. And I was trying to tell them about this surreal, like spiritual experience on that. They was more interested in just going down and playing Kaluki. But no, I've had some great experiences. I've been all around the world. I've been out with some beautiful women. I mean, I went out with.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, is your dating history. I mean, they're beautiful women.
Well, I've been out with loads of famous women. Honestly, we only got to look at my social media. But no, I've been out. Obviously, Paige, you've met Paige, absolutely beautiful. And no, I've been out, and obviously, I'm 51 now, and I get girls in their 20s like all
You're like
jumping
Leonardo
on me.
DiCaprio dating. Yeah, he likes good-looking women.
No, and women. I do love beautiful women. It's not that I'm not. I treat them like princesses. Maybe years ago I didn't, but no, I try my best. And me and my daughter are talking again now, so we're sort of we're going easy, but no, I'm just taking things gradual. But no, I'm on a nice date. Me and Paige, we're not together now, but I thought we'd have gone all the distance. But I'm going on a date Saturday evening with a nice girl from Blackpool. So she's very similar looking to Paige, actually.
You prefer northern women?
I do prefer. Paige was from Rotherham.
Yeah.
So no, I do prefer northern women. Yeah. If I'm honest, I think I just don't. I think because they like the accent more up north. So that's my
selling point.
And they're more down to earth as well, aren't they?
More family orientated.
Yes.
Where down south they seem to be very stuck up, and I've got a lot of girlfriends.
Excuse me.
No. Sorry, Jen. Sorry, apart from you.
Well, you're not London. You're the other side.
Southwest.
So
that's a whole different.
We're carrot crunchers.
That's a whole different category of women.
No. I've been very lucky.
London.
I've been at some beautiful women. I've been out with one crazy woman. That's a whole podcast in itself. She was a porn star, but she was connected to a billionaire.
How did you meet her then?
Met her. Yeah. I met her on Facebook in 2008, but I was still seeing Rachel at the same time, and she was like my guilty pleasure. But she was seeing the sixth richest man in the world. I can't say his name, could I?
No.
But he was the sixth richest man in the world. 26 billion he was worth, and he died around that same time and left her an absolute fortune. So we had a year of debauch parties like you couldn't believe, with other porn stars, and it was like I'd creep off from my lovely little 4-bedroom house in Kent to go over to sort of Chelsea, Fulham, South Kensington and play with the big people, and I was just living the dream.
Did she quit porn when she got that money?
Yeah, but still involved in the sex industry. But it was sad to see still a lot of people are so bad on the coke, and they go for days on them partying, and then I mean, it's like now, I know a lot of girls who are escorts in London, and some of these girls can go on between 5 and 10 grand a day, and they're out there partying for 2 or 3 days. But how long is that, with the shit they're sniffing now, how long is that going to last? Or before their minds are ravaged with like,
Every stripper I ever dated in America said, "Yeah, I can make 10,000 in a night." I go to the place; they're always broke. It's all gone on drugs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like Ginger from Casino.
It's what?
Easy come, easy go.
Yeah.
No, and there's no regret. Listen, exactly what you just said there. I've dated a girl who was an escort, bought something beautiful once, lost it. Was like, wasn't even bothered about it. I thought I spent thousands and thousands on that gift, and then you just lost it. And I thought, do you know, because they earned so much money, they got no regard for anything. So how can they have any regard for any possessions? How can they have regard for a person? Because if they've sold their soul, basically, you sleep with men 10, 15, 5, 10 men a day. That's got to affect you.
Each time takes a bit of the soul.
Of course it does. 100% it does.
Yeah.
They're not
I
pure.
still can't understand why she didn't quit if she inherited all this money from this guy.
Do you know what I'm saying? This would be a podcast on itself. Maybe we have to do that at a later date.
Yeah.
And we'll speak to the lawyers first.
Was it like an addiction to the lifestyle?
Sure, do you know what I'm saying? I was addicted to the lifestyle.
Yeah.
2008 was probably one of the best years of my life. I mean, I can honestly say it was like unlimited money, parties, people. We was out with lords and ladies. We was having private. We was at.
You're saying lords and ladies take drugs?
Yeah.
Of course. No comment.
But I used to live on the King's Road, so I would go to a little cafe, Mona Lisa's down there, beautiful breakfast, and they used to open up for the dinner. You'd always see Lord Brockett there, you know, the one who buried his Ferraris and went to prison. But Bob Geldof would be sitting outside. You'd see like Caprice and Supermodel. You'd see them all around there, and it was like, I loved it. Chelsea's a great, got a great vibe. But no, listen, and I've got a friend now, Stuart. When I was in prison, this guy, he reminds me of, he's an eccentric guy from up north, but Stuart Mafia, his name is. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's helped me so much. You know, when I was in prison, he's the one that sent me 500 quid, didn't pay any lawyers' fees. But he's an eccentric character, got a big mansion up north, Ferrari. He's got a beautiful partner in Chelsea, but he's like my big brother. He's really helped me.
So do you say that you're attracted to dangerous women?
Yeah, no, do you know what it is? I'm attracted to naughty women. But no, I'm attracted to, no, do you know what it is? I am the sort of stereotype person who attracts the escorts and the strippers.
Yeah.
I think that's because of doing these podcasts, the way I sort of conduct myself, the book, and my lifestyle.
But it is a fast lifestyle.
Yeah, but do you know what it is no one wants to live forever, do they? And I'm having good fun at the minute. So until someone my own age can come along and wave a magic wand to make it all different and bake me the perfect casserole and provide me with a great big mansion, then I'm happy to carry on with the
So
false
they
lifestyle.
see you as the life and soul of the party.
Yeah, no, I always have been, but then it said, as I'm getting older, I'm not so much, I don't really like going out to pubs. I don't go pubs. I don't go clubs. I like nice hotel bars. I like nice restaurants. So I don't run into any trouble or idiots.
But if you're attracting women who want to party all the time,
It's the
But
party
no,
lifestyle.
they seek me out through social media. Sean.
Isn't that-
My TikTok is like, God, I'm getting hit on by girl after girl.
I want
And
to
it's
party
like,
with Jimmy.
we'll all go, but you got to wait first.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying life at the minute, but I'm not saying I want to continue that. I mean, 1 or 2 days.
doesn't
a
it get
week,
to the point where it starts wearing you out?
It's really wearing me out now. That's why I shoot testosterone into me once a week. But it does wear me out. I like nice food now. Good food, good wine. And
The nice life.
And do you,
nice
to
life.
balance it out, do you like maintain a fitness regimen?
yeah, no, I box every day. I do my
Box
box. I
every
boxed this
day?
morning. I was up at 6 o'clock this morning doing my
Holy
boxing.
shit.
And also, when someone thinks they're going to be, look, I know that you're ready and you're like that. You're like that tiger ready to pounce. No, while all the other people are sitting at 6 o'clock doing kitchen parties, I'll be up training, doing my boxing. But then I might get on a Tuesday or a Friday. I think I've only got to have one drink. Once I have one drink, then I know the rest of the night's over.
And how do you keep your stamina up for?
Silalis and
Are you asking for a friend?
I meant for the boxing. For the boxing.
Get bollocks.
You go jogging and
No,
stuff.
for testosterone, walking, Fiji water. I drink
Yeah.
by the gallon. I love Fiji water.
Yeah.
I eat very good. So this morning I had scrambled eggs and salmon and
Do you
and a
run
bottle
or
of
anything
water.
like that?
Don't run, walk everywhere. I do
Yeah,
about
you were
do
saying earlier, that's
30,000 steps a day, and I'm doing like sort of 6 threes on the bag, and I feel good with that.
You look like you're in phenomenal shape.
No, I do feel it. No, since me and Paige sort of party company, I'm doing a lot more.
Yeah.
Because obviously that gives me more. I want to get the best I can.
And you mentioned since the podcast that you've had the police approach you about doing school talks.
Yeah, no, I spoke.
What other
Yeah.
positive things have you
I'm
had to come
definitely going
about
to do
it?
that with West Yorkshire. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's going to schools basically and sports clubs and speaking about my experiences with life, crime, and drugs, and how to deter these youngsters from a different way of life. And it's something I'm very, very well. And obviously, I'm doing. Julie wants to do I want to do another book with HarperCollins, maybe like an autobiography, but not about crime, maybe more about my life with the family. So like it's like a family way. So it'd be speaking about certain things, but obviously there's a lot of stuff about my family which I would love to say in a book which isn't crime related.
Yeah.
So earlier you said you thought, Paige was the one. If you met the one...
To be honest, I'm not ruling that me and Paige won't even get back together, but I do feel that she's got to live her life. I don't want to clip her wings and keep her hostage as much as I'd love to, because she's beautiful and she makes me laugh. But I want her to live her life. She's got her own issues and she's got to deal with that. But no, we're still speaking. We're still friends. We speak every day on the phone.
If you met the one, what would you envision your life as then? Like marriage and more kids?
No, my daughters, because she'd go horrible. No, because I would love to get the little house out near York, a couple of dogs, and I just have that nice lifestyle. Go missing with my friends on a Friday night, come in the next day being told off, and always like going out having a Sunday dinner or friends over for a Sunday dinner. I love travelling. But Dublin's very close to my heart.
So yeah, you definitely want to move there.
I enjoy it. I've been thinking the last few weeks because I was thinking near York. I love York, and
what do you like about York?
It's a lovely
It's
city,
traditionally,
isn't it?
listen, it's traditionally English without getting be called a racist. It's like where everyone seems to have blue eyes, and it's like, and it's like the old fashioned. It's very Viking.
like Sweden.
But it's just like old English. What I remember in the 70s, growing up as a little kid, it's like sweet shops and lovely little cobbled streets and families holding their children without seeing little groups of like scallywags and just real nice old English. What I remember.
I think I'm speaking at York in November.
Definitely, I'll definitely come up and see you there, Sean. 100%. I love it, and I've got a lot of friends there, so I'll get them to come up there.
Yeah.
So apart from the book and spreading the word on talks, what do you have planned next?
Obviously, I've spoke to you about the TV. I've been offered a part in the TV show, just waiting. I've obviously done my promotional with them at Elstree last week. So we've still got a few little bits and pieces to sort out. Spoke to my agent last week, looking to maybe put out an autobiography this year. Not crime, nothing to do with crime. My autobiography will mention obviously bits of crime, but it's not a criminal book. It's an autobiography. I'm just looking to I'm involved in certain projects which I'm not too sure. I'm just taking. I'm in a position that I haven't got to worry about anything in life. I'm just enjoying each day, and a few things I just want to be happy.
Are you looking to be sponsored by a hat company?
Yeah, before I met them, I've become really good friends with Frank. Yeah, God. So WB Friends, they're on Instagram. They're an amazing hat company. It's where I'm wearing these today. This is called. This is not the leader. They do all different caps like the Baker Boy caps, the Gatsby caps, the leader caps, but they're the latest hat brand, and so I'm like an ambassador for them now. So they're absolutely smashing it, using all the top sort of faces to wear their hats.
Come on, hook me up, WB. I've got a really big head.
So I don't know. So what? So
wherever I go, I can never find the hat.
That's awful. That one as well. It's covered in fluff.
No. Listen. I'll get Frank to hook you up. Frank will hook you up at WB Friends.
So throughout this crazy time, have you any regrets?
Of course you do, but the thing is, if you to sit and dwell on regrets, you're gonna die a lonely old man. I do. I obviously bringing up the sexual things today, the sexual abuse, what happened to me.
It's very brave of you.
That's gonna probably I'll probably have to go and have a drink tonight. But it's very upsetting. It's something because I still feel for my parents of all the shit I put them through, and I believe that if that wouldn't have happened to me, I would have been a totally different boy and a man. I believe what happened to me it took a long time for me to become a man. Even so last few years, I think nursing my mum through cancer for a year, I become a real man then. That's when I'd actually say that my mum actually said for 49 years, I've not been really proud of you, but today I can honestly say I'm proud of you and you're a real man in my eyes and your dad would be proud of you. And to see that, I cried my eyes out and I turned my back on her and I was crying. But to hear that was really powerful and passionate because my mum was such a strong, cold-hearted woman. She was brought up with shoes. She ran away from home at 15 and her brother had some sort of illness. So she nursed him, he was disabled. And then he became a multi-millionaire. And when my mum and dad lost a lot of money in the early 90s, she needed some help and he sort of turned his back on her. And I thought, what a dog. And then my mum had looked after him while he was disabled and everything. And actually my dad lent him his first bit of money to start his most successful business up. And but my dad wouldn't be horrible to family members or anything like that. My dad was ruthless, but not with... My dad had a heart. And it's why I try and focus on the good things with my mum and dad. And now for me, I do want to work. I mean, because I want to get into some sort of business, Sean, because I don't want to be lazy. I don't want to sit around just dwindle everything you've got. I want to keep, and obviously I enjoy doing the podcast. I really do, because I've got a story to tell. And if I can help a few people along the way or deter people from a life of crime, then that would make it perfect.
I mean, is that the first time you spoke about the abuse today?
Never spoke about it before anyone else, so it's exclusive for Sean Atwood.
And do you feel a weight has been lifted?
Yeah, of course I do, because I think that I'm going to get a lot of positive response from this. And also, if I can help other people maybe come out of people who haven't actually, these people's abusers might still be out there. They might still be able to do something about it.
The abusers are out there because the government doesn't give a shit.
No, you're right. And I've actually heard it firsthand from a police officer who said, but then I've seen other actions of the police. But I mean, I know they're fighting a hard job. I mean, the country's in a complete and utter mess. I mean, I had a heating bill for 680 quid and I don't even have the heating on. And then you're getting, I mean, gravy granules were £2 now they're like £4.50. I'm seeing all this mad shit on social media thinking, but when are people going to think, are people stupid enough to think, and you just see people going in shops now, just filling up their bags and walking out because people have had enough. And eventually it's going to happen on a lot bigger scale. Look at Liverpool with the police van being burnt out.
There's a lot of home crimes, robberies going on at the moment. And
home crimes?
Like home robberies.
I've seen it in London. No, I've seen it in London where they've got Range Rovers on driving. They're knocking on the door pretending to have a parcel, and then there's like 8 of them all masked up going in the houses because the person they believe's got a watch on or bits and pieces. I mean, I'm lucky. I live in a beautiful penthouse with concierge, security, cameras everywhere. You could never get into. No, listen, the police would have a problem getting into me. So, and then obviously where I live, there's a big government building, and they got armed police outside. So, really, for me, I live in a perfect location. But as I said, it's a very dangerous world we live in now.
Yes.
When you've taken care of your mum then, did you do soul searching?
Yeah. So I've done a lot of soul searching, and I believe I'm a better person now. I've got some really, really good friends, and they are really good friends. They're loyal friends. And I mean, don't get me wrong, some of my friends have been criminals. They've changed their lives. But I believe that where I lived in Bromley over there, these people were still the same people. They're like, listen, I'm not going to call people, but listen, that's their prerogative, that's their lives. But these people are like, they prey on people. They're not nice people.
So did the soul searching make you change your life priorities?
Changed my whole life priorities. I loved Paige to bits, still do. But unfortunately, listen, life goes on, and she's got a whole life in front of her. I'm on the back part of mine now, so I want to make each day count and make loads of memories. Obviously, me and my daughter, hopefully we rebalance things out, but I've got some really good friends, and I'm enjoying going on those. We go out for some lovely meals, we have some right laughs, and that's what it's about. It's about if you can go home the next day or you smile the next day when you wake up, you got money in the bank, you got food in the cupboards, you got nice clothes, you got a car, you're happy.
And one of my last questions is, how would you say gangster life differs from the present to back then?
Well, for now, I wouldn't say there's a gangster life anymore. It's to what I see it is, and it's these young kids wearing balaclavas, hats, and like tracksuits, going about in gangs with certain type of this drill music or whatever they're doing. They're all shot in their drugs. They're doing what they're doing and running their corners or where their ends are. But it's when I was doing it with the gangsters. Listen, these gangsters would get out of Rolls Royces and Ferraris, and they'd all have their beautiful pinky rings on. They wouldn't have to worry about anyone coming and stealing their watches or rings. They'd sit there and drink. They were gentlemen, but away from that, they were ruthless bastards. But it was like exactly what you see in the film, like The Business. Or this was how we lived. And unfortunately, obviously, that's why for me, crime is not an option.
No.
And I'd rather be dead than go back to that life or be involved in that in any way, shape, or form.
So the other thing you guys have both got in common, the conclusion you come to then, reflecting on your lives, is to have dogs around you.
I love dogs.
Jen wants a dog farm.
I do.
Love dogs. But my uncle, before he died, he was a famous poker player called Bobby Clark. He died in a few years. He died a year before my mum. 2021 or 2020 died, and he had 22 dogs.
No.
They was like him and his wife was on Poor House Rich House. They was on Poor House Rich House, and they had the bill. But he had 22 dogs. They had 2 Dobermans, Ronnie and Reggie. Then another one called Violet. Then they had 16 Chihuahuas. 2 of these little things. 22 dogs. And he said to me, "Do you know something? Fuck any people.
I love
like
dogs
these
more than people.
I mean, I've
Yeah.
got 4 chihuahuas now. They live with my ex-girlfriends, so I get to see them every couple of weeks, and I love them. And I mean, one of them's just got attacked the other week by a pit bull, but my ex managed to get the pit bull's mouth, open the mouth, and pull the dog.
Because they get lockjaw.
The poor little dog dog should have made birth anyway. He was like run to the litter. Then he had to have an operation because his paw was dying. Then he had all scar there, but this little dog keeps fighting back. He's like a proper little fighter, and now he terrorises all the other dogs. But no, he's got through that. Poor little thing's got tubing him the other week where he's like nearly had his head bit off, but he just got through it.
Oh, good.
But so no, I love animals more than people.
If I watch an animal getting hurt on a film, I get more upset than people.
I saw the other day. I saw a golden eagle fly off with a poodle
What?
on TikTok.
Oh, on TikTok.
I'll show you the video in a minute, yeah. And do you know what it is? And you see the dog look all happy, but I think the eagle had picked it up and you just don't realise. Apparently, they take dogs all the time.
What?
And I saw another one. I mean, this is odd to tell you off this one. No, but yeah, you just don't. I saw a guy.
Where was this?
An alligator dragged the dog.
America,
An alligator dragged the dog in the river. And the dog guy, he's 70 odd with his cigars, got into the river, grabbed the alligator, opened its jaws. The dog's got out, okay, and he's just slugged the alligator back in. But he's done it all while he's got his cigar in his mouth.
Absolutely.
I see some mad shit on that TikTok. But no, I love it. I thought, what a legend. He's like a proper legend.
I want to meet that guy.
If you were going to get a dog, Jen, what type would you get?
Whippet or a Boston. I used to have a Boston Terrier.
No, I like Chihuahuas. I like Chihuahuas, little ones. But if I do like, my favourite dog is a Rottweiler. I do love Rottweilers. I was brought up with Rottweilers. So, my dog Tara, her granddad was the dog in the Omen film.
No way.
Yeah,
Really?
so even our dogs were in the fucking films. Yeah,
Wow.
no, even our dogs. Yeah, her I think it was her dad or granddad. So we got Tara in 1980. Yeah, it was. I think it was her granddad. Yeah, it was her granddad.
Wow.
Shout out to dogs.
Right, so please check out Jimmy's links in the description box if you've got any opportunities for him to speak in schools, prisons, or anything else. Since it message his way through Instagram. Is that your main one, Instagram?
No, Facebook is my main
Facebook.
one. Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Yeah.
All 3 links will be down there. All Jen's links are down there as well. Put any questions, comments in the comments, and thank you for watching, and take care till next time.
Thanks
very much.
Cheers.
Thank you, Sean.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Cheers. He cut his wife's head off and drove about in a Mini for 2 months. He was the Queen's cousin. And stabbed a samurai sword in him and opened him up, and literally right opened it. The guy was a psychopath. He used to go to the pub and open people up for fun. He was no one wanted to be around him. They called him the plum. So as he was coming in, my dad went running over. He had his suit on, and the geezer's come up with a big knife. And I remember my dad just went crash, one right hand, and my dad hit him. His face, it looked like Sean. It was like something out of a cartoon. His face went all distorted, and it was like my dad hit him and took the knife off him and then rammed it straight in his shoulder. Literally, it pierced him to where the carpet was. I think when they come round, they couldn't get him out because the carpet was the knife was so wedged in. Like felt wallpaper. They had that in the Limelight VIP bit, but there was blood all up the walls. I remember Peter Bleaksy saying if the roof would have fallen in that night, 90% of South London's underworld would have been gone. They normally leave someone dead in the toilets or the half. They were really evil people. But I loved it. I was like a kid, like a sponge, just soaking up all this. I was like, hell. I had to see psychologists, no judge or court would listen to my story because they said what went on in that party wasn't of a normal human being. When I smashed it into him, it burst his bowel. So what happened was, apparently he died 3 times on the operating table because because where he'd been stabbed, he didn't realise, and for 2 or 3 hours, his excrement was leaking out of his bowel. So they opened him up from his groin up to his neck. He'd had 400 stitches. They used to have bowls of 4 or 5 ounces with playing cards stuck in them. And everyone would just take a little bit and go off to the toilet and all the women are walking about in shoulder pads something out of Dallas. And all the guys have got something out of Miami Vice. For me, when I was 19 doing it, they was just the White Doves of 91. And for me, when I had that first half of dub, I was I never danced in my life, and I had my hands on the banisters in Limelight in the church. And next thing, my legs their own little thing, and I'm thinking, hell. I saw someone who I hated at school, and how are you going to come and have a drink? And this to me was this was the best thing that had ever happened in my life. I think about things, what my mum told me, and I know they're looking up over me, and I do want to do the best of my life now. He had a shield round him. It was an aura, and as a kid I was I love this. It's I'm a problem solver, son. I said, what do you mean? He went, well, if someone's got a problem, I'll solve it. He didn't really like the company of other gangsters. He chose to drink with the window cleaner and I said, Dad, why do you drink with those old mugs? And he goes, son, they're not mugs. They go to work from 9 to 5. They look after their family and they're really decent people. He said, gangsters won't give you nothing. They just take off you. They're leeches. He said, see that guy, the window cleaner you mug off, the poor Harry the window cleaner? He said, he gave me a bit of work and I earned £1 million. He said, someone look, what was. I thought I could just be 19 and be like turned into my dad. And real life isn't like that.
Many of you've seen Jimmy Tippett go viral on TikTok. He's been on YouTube on Liquid Bullet. Jen's mate Ben's had him on Inquirer 1.0. Credit him. We'll put a link in the description box to all this good stuff. And loads of people have been trying to get Jimmy on, so we are honoured. He's got such an amazing story. He is a high-powered speaker. I mean, people come in and they got no energy or they give us short answers. We just like to sit here mesmerised by people like Jimmy. So huge thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah,
That's
thank
okay,
you.
my pleasure.
You said that you had an uncle who was a cop killer.
Yeah, Freddie Saul. He was Britain's most wanted man. In 1971, in August, he went on to an armed robbery in Blackpool with some other guys. And it was on a jeweller's, but it went wrong. Someone pressed the alarm buzzer. There was smoke coming out. Fred ended up running down an alley, but Chief Superintendent Richardson, a high-ranking police officer in Blackpool, chased after Fred. Fred spun round, but the guy sort of jumped onto the gun, and Fred pulled the trigger. It was like an air. It went, and that was Fred's life over. He was then officially on the run. He was Britain's most wanted man for 6 weeks until he was caught. So I was born in the 9th of September 1971. So Fred was still at large. So where I was born in Lewisham Hospital, there was a little place called Ladywell where my nan lived. So the police went to the hospital. They went to my nan's address. So obviously it took the dairy off of as my mum said, it took the dairy right off your birth, Jim, because everyone was going to be talking about her baby son being born to my dad, and it was like Fred was in the papers every single day being Britain's most wanted man. So my mum said it took the dairy right off your fucking birth. So so that was my story, sort of into the underworld, and obviously with my dad being who he was.
Because we've got a lot of viewers in America then, what's your definition of the London underworld?
The London underworld, I said, well, everyone says, don't they, Sean? It was like the Ronnie and Reggie of the Gangland 60s and the Richardsons, who are all family, who were and still are the Richardsons, Eddie Richardson, who's alive. They're all family friends. But no, I think it was just the 60s. It was like the American, Prohibition years, wasn't it? It was all dolled up like in suits with George Raft coming over. It was a James Cat. My dad actually,
Pinky rings.
Yeah, but that's what I said. My dad had a spieler in Lewisham up in near, where was it? It was above the kebab house, just by the bowling alley. I can't think of the hill Belmont Hill it was, going towards Blackheath. And as a kid, I would go up there and you had all the people sort of, like you had the Smiths, the Haywoods, Ronnie Easterbrook, do you remember him? He was a guy who blew himself out with Semtex out of the prison van. Oh, he was on a armed robbery in 1987. They'd done a robbery, and there's a thing on YouTube, really interesting. It's called Operation Turkey. And it's where the police are following a group of armed robbers. And it's like a live documentary as they're doing it. And you see them filming it. And then Ronnie has a shootout. Tony Ash got shot dead. He had a wig on. And he got shot dead. And you see him on the floor with the wig on the floor. And Ronnie got shot by the police marksman. And he was still shooting back at the copper. But Ronnie got a natural life sentence and fought it up until the day he died, which was around 2008, 2010, I believe. And he was went into his 60s. He refused to accept. He said he was a political prisoner. He spent most of those years as a AAA cat. Wow. But he got someone in the IRA when he was in Brixton to smuggle some Semtex in. And what he done is he put it inside the van. But what he done, he put his court papers and he ended up losing 2 fingers because instead of going outwards, it went inwards. So the explosion went inwards. He'd done it wrong. But he had it smuggled in some Kraft Dairy Lee cheese because you was allowed certain food items when they was on remand in Brixton. So this is back in the day. But no, I grew up with all these sort of people, like with Freddie. We used to go on holiday with Freddie Foreman.
When did you become aware? Because you said you were born in 72.
71.
71. So when did you become aware that all this was going on around you?
I think, Joe, it was, as a kid, I always knew I was different because we would go out. My dad never used to work. He'd have illegal gambling clubs like Spielers. And all my dad's friends were like, you'd always see them in a newspaper, or they'd come round and they was all big gold Rolexes, pinky rings. And my dad's friends were he had a guy, a Scouser called Norman Johnson, and he was like one of my dad's closest friends. And this guy was, I would say, one of my favourite of my dad's friends because he had an affair with the Princess of Oman. And she ran away with him in 1979 with £10 million in suitcases.
What?
The News of the World blew the story right up. And he wrote a book called Black Eyes and Blue Blood. It's out. It's just by Norman Johnson. He died in 2012. But Norman had like the big mansion in Stafford. He had the big old Rolex, the big 8-carat diamond, all the Rottweilers, changed his cars like he changed his underwear. And he lived life like, always in Marbella, New York. And he actually worked with Russell Bufalino, who the film The Irishman was based on.
Holy shit.
So he was, growing up as a kid, I knew that, I thought, wow, this is, my dad's friends would go in the pub and everyone would sort of move away from them. They would stood at the bar and they would go, and they had like a never-ending supply of £50 notes. You'd see them go to the bar, mate, keep the change, and you'd see them all like running around. But whenever they sort of pulled the money out, everyone would appear and everyone else would be stood there like waiting around like fools, I'd used to say. But I knew that they were different. And it was like, I used to love being with my dad. He had like, if he walked in, Sean, he was mesmerising. He was like, he had these still eyes, but he had a flat nose, but very good looking man. And he would just walk in, he was immaculately dressed, but he would treat everyone with respect. But everyone, he had like a shield around him. It was like an aura. And as a kid, I was like, fucking hell, I love this. And even my mum and dad's friends, like Donald Sutherland, the Hollywood actor, and like they would come over and we'd go for dinner in Langham's. But he would be like in awe of my dad. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, you're a big star. And Kiefer was like a lot younger at the time. He'd just done Stand By Me, which was a really great film. And it was like, they was like in awe of my dad. And I thought, fucking hell, these are like famous people. Why are they like that? But whenever we was out, everyone was always in awe of my dad. And I used to say to my dad, Dad, what do you do for a living? And he'd go like, because the people at school asked what you do for a living. He'd say, I'm a problem solver, son. I said, what do you mean? He went, well, if someone's got a problem, I'll solve it. And I said, well, what do you mean? He went, well, say, look, someone comes to me, son, they're having problems with like, say, a load of travellers one day. This woman, they've been terrorised by these travellers for years. And they've been trying to nick their land. And my dad went down there, went into their pub on his own. And he ended up doing what he had to do. And this woman wrote me a letter saying, we've been to the police, we've been to the courts, we've tried to hire people, we've employed, you come down in one day and solve it. We are so indebted to you. But my dad wouldn't take any money from them. He said, son, they're a really nice family. He said, and they deserved my help. But he could be very nice as well. And he wouldn't drink he didn't really like the company of other gangsters. He was partners with Eddie Richardson in the unlicensed boxing, but he chose to drink with the window cleaner and I said, Dad, why do you drink with those old mugs? And he goes, son, they're not mugs. They go to work from 9 to 5. They look after their family and they're really decent people. He said, but these people, he said, gangsters won't give you nothing. They just take off you. They're leeches. He said, see that guy, the window cleaner you mug off, the poor Harry the window cleaner? He said, he gave me a bit of work and I earned £1 million. He said, someone, back was, I can say it now, I'm not implicating my dad, but at the time, there was a guy in Norfolk, his daughter was going out with a Colombian drug baron. They were storing all their coke in this guy's shed, underneath the shed. Now, this guy got in touch with the window cleaner who said, do you know anyone who might be, I think it's a load of drugs. He got in touch with my dad. My dad's his son. He said, I didn't move straight away and earned 900 grand out of it. He said, so what gang's going to come to me and tell me he's got a big parcel and fucking get... He said, but he wasn't a drug dealer with dad, but on this occasion, he moved that from A to B and got his money.
Yeah.
But he was a great, as a kid, we would have anything we wanted. My mum was nearly 20 years younger than my dad. She was like the glamorous lady, but she was the one who wore the trousers. If my dad was in a pub and she phoned up, he'd go, no. And then he'd be straight with his gold spot, straight in his car driving home. You know, like he was petrified of my mum. But she wore the trousers.
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
Aside from obviously your dad being a local celebrity almost, what was family life back at home?
He was fantastic. My dad was a family man. He would come home. We had 3 Yorkshire Terriers, we had 2 Rottweilers, and we had a little cat. And my dad would just. He was a family man. He loved his mum. He'd go and see his mum mauled every single day. She lived in South London. He would go and see her every day, drop cigarettes off, sit and have a cup of tea with her. She always used to do tomatoes on toast. But my nan had 5 sisters and a brother who died in a fire in Canada. So she had lots and lots of family members. So as you went into my nan's, all you'd hear is 3 bell rings, people coming in all day long, every day. In 1978, my dad was working on a film called The Macintosh Man with... who was the guy? James Cagney and Edward G. Robinson, I think it was. And he took them both round to his mum's because she loved James Cagney and he was on crutches at the time. And my dad was minding him and he took him round to my nan's and it was like the highlight of my nan's life. She had like a picture on, which I'm going to put in my dad's book of like... And obviously then my dad knew Frank Sinatra because he'd been working with him since the 50s. And Frank had come over and stayed with my dad at Forest Hill where he was living.
Did he know Rod Stewart?
No, we had a funny running with Rod Stewart in Langhams. Yeah, so yeah, we was in Langhams one day. My dad had his back to him, and we was making a lot of noise. And honestly, my dad and all his friends, it was on Lauren Perrier Rose, causing a big. And my dad was smoking a big. He always smoked big Cohibas. And there was loads of smoke, and you could see Rod's missus was getting a right arm, and he's like kicking, and he's like all like done up like a little tart, and the minder went over to the table, but sort of as my dad turned around, he looked at my dad, went over to the table, he went to Rod like that, moved his hands, and then they got up and left straight away, and that's when I thought, fucking hell, and I knew who Rod Stewart was, and then obviously then my dad would say to me, well, I said, I'm going up London, Dad, I'm 17, I want to go to a club. He went, I'll go and see my pal Lenny at the Hippodrome, or Johnny Madden at Stringfellas. So every time I used to go, I didn't want to like do it, Sean, but I'd go to one day, I went, is Lenny about, mate? Two great big bruises on the door, and they went, who wants to know, mate? I said, it's Jimmy Tippett Jr. It's Jimmy Tippett's son. He went, 2 seconds. Next thing you know, Lenny come bowling over like he's massive lump Lenny. And he's got his fingerless gloves. And he went, come in, young Jim, come in. He said, but you drop these fucking hermits out you with. He said, I don't want you hanging around with these. Oh, sorry my language. But no, and then I've had to sit down in a cider bar, and he took me all the way home after Sean. It did have its good things, but also all the doormen would sit there and watch me all night long. You know, like, because obviously they're my dad's friends, and they didn't want anything undoing. If I was in the toilet with another man, come in, you're not taking drugs, are you? You're not up to no good. I thought, fuck it, I wanted to. I didn't have half, I couldn't do it. But no, it was fantastic growing up like that. And obviously, my mum and dad had loads, their friends sort of, we used to go to Marbella, we'd go to Freddie Foreman's club, which was Eagles up in Port Bernouce. And that was my first introduction into cocaine, really, because they used to have bowls of like 4 or 5 ounces of coke with playing cards stuck in them. And everyone would just like take a little bit and go off to the toilet and all the women are walking about in shoulder pads like sung out of Dallas. And all the guys have got like sung out of Miami Vice with no socks on, with the white trousers and the white shoes and the big Rolexes on. And that for me, that was my friends at school, their mums and dads were like builders, and you'd see them driving their normal cars. At our house, you'd see Ferraris outside and Range Rovers and Rolls Royces and all these characters coming in and out. And then the next week, you see one of the mum and dad's friends in the paper who just gone down on an armed robbery or killed someone, and you think, oh, but they was all right. That was normal life.
Yeah.
It was very similar to, I'd say, an English version of Goodfellas. It's very similar.
That first line of coke, then, did you get hooked on it, or was it just?
Do you know, it was Sean. I was just about to get ready to go into the boxing in a big world. Frank Warren was signing me up with Sports Network. And I was working with some well-known gangsters in South London who were like friends of my dad's friends' sons. And we used to go to a place called Charlie's Wine Bar, which was like, I remember Peter Bleaksy saying, if the roof would have fallen in that night, 90% of South London's underworld would have been gone. Yeah. You had like Tony White from the Brinksmat robbery. You had the Arifs. You had Johnny Fleming, who was on a Security Express robbery, who got extradited back. All big names. Jimmy Brand, you had all massive players in South London, all the Peckham firm, the Wild Bunch, they used to call them, because as they'd come in, they'd normally leave someone dead in the toilets or half dead. They were like really evil people. But I loved it. I was like a kid, like a sponge, just soaking up all this. I was like, fucking hell. And I remember I didn't touch nothing. I didn't even drink. I didn't even have a drink. I was drinking sparkling water, and I used to end up driving a lot of them up to the clubs in London. They bung me a few quid. And then one day he went, oh, please have a line, Jim, have a line. I remember like, he was chopping it up, and you get that smell of it. It's like, it smelled like paint stripper. And I was like, I just do a little tiny bit. I remember thinking, wow, that's fucking, I was chatting away, I'm fucking chatting away for the fast as anything. But I was like, oh, this is great. But then I would just sort of get myself a little half a gram, and then the next week it would go to a gram, and then it would be an eighth. And then I got into the E's, which with that, for me, when I was 19 doing the E's, they was just like the White Doves of 91. And for me, when I had that first half a dub, I was like, I never danced in my life, and I had my hands on the banisters in Limelight in the church. And next thing, my legs are fucking doing their own little thing, and I'm thinking, fucking hell. And then the next week, I'm with Nigel Ben in the VIP bit, we're on the fucking balcony, like rocking away on these E's. I'm thinking, oh, this is great. And I saw someone who I fucking hated at school, and they're like, oh, how are you going? Come and have a drink. And this to me was like, this was the best thing that had ever happened in my life. And then I started getting involved in selling them. I mean, I was getting them. I remember I was paying, what was I paying? I was getting them cheap at the time for like just over £5, but they would fluctuate like between 20, they used to go up to 25 pences. And I was knocking about £5.50 on the 1,000. And I was like doing 10,000. A lot of my friends who were doing raves, they would come down and buy them off me in bulk. And it was like brilliant. It was like, I was thinking, fucking hell, at the weekends, I had a Mercedes Cosworth, a little midi gold Rolex. I thought I was like fucking Al Capone. I was like, honestly, I thought I had loads of money stashed everywhere, a flat in the Isle of Dogs. I was like fucking not even 20. My mates at school were going to work for like 10 grand a year. I was earning that a week. And I'm thinking, but I would then spend most of that and I'd be like in a drug-induced state from Thursday to the Monday. And then it'd be like working all week to just get back to Thursday and then restock and then go back again. It was just like a mental drug craze. But the E's, that definitely was like, I had some great times.
We had Andrew Pritchard on. Was he involved in your e-dealings?
Do you know what it was? Dave Courtney was doing all the raves at the scene at the time. He was the head doorman at Limelight. I caused him havoc, to be truthful. He used to suffer a lot. We was in there one night and there was a big fight between the Adamses over North London, who I know, and you had my lot in South London. But the South London lot got the better this particular night, and there was blood. It was at like felt wallpaper. I can't remember what they used to have in Indian restaurants. They had that in the Limelight VIP bit, but there was blood all up the walls. And I went back to Limelight a few weeks later and Dave went, Jim, he said, he pulled me to say, he went, Jim, he said, it's come orders from above. They don't want you in here because of what happened that night. There's blood. I said, well, what do they mean they blame me? He said, well, you're the one being recognised the most. I thought, fuck, I'm 19 years old. He said, but the orders from above had said, like, they didn't want me in Limelight nightclub because obviously there had been a massive, massive gang fight. But then obviously, then we used to go to Legends in Old Burlington Street. My mum and dad's friends owned the WAG club, so we would go. I never spot. We would always go to other clubs. But no, Dave was very much on the scene at the time. But my dad was very fond of Dave.
And at that point, had you had a brushing with the law?
Yeah, no, I'd had a few brushes with the law. I'd been off for fighting and like silly things as you do as a youngster. I mean, at school, I got arrested for taking an air pistol to school. Silly things.
What?
An air pistol. You know,
Yes.
like an air gun. I wouldn't consider that bad, but obviously today it's bad, isn't it? It's going to lead to this and lead to that. But no, I was more a fighter at school because obviously boxing was in my genes with my dad and that. So my dad was a very famous boxer. But then he went hooky with Mickey Duff because my dad won his first 20 professional fights, which in the 50s was unheard of. No one done that. He won 20 straight fights and had 16 knockouts. Wow. Now, to do that, even in this day, you would have a British title fight on your 15th fight. So on my dad's was going on a date with Joan Collins on his 21st on his 21st fight. He was going on a date with Joan Collins, who Richard Attenborough, my dad's friends, set him up with because they was friends. They lived in Greenwich at the time, and my dad was boxed out of Greenwich. And my dad said to me, "Oh, son," he said, "I was getting 15 quid a fight." So you're talking about 1954, 55. He said, "Son, I'm like, I know it would have been. It'd been about 53." And he said, "Son," he said, "I was going on a date this night." And then Mickey Duff said to me, "If you go down in the third round, I will give you 175 quid." Now my dad said, "You imagine I'm going on a date with a beautiful actress." He said, "I can go with 15 quid or I can go with 100. He said 15 quid wouldn't still pay for the night. He said, but having 175 quid in your pocket in the 50s is like, it's like you going out with 10 grand in your pocket. He said, so what would you do? And you haven't, he said, and boxing wasn't like, my dad didn't sit there, he was fighting under 3 different names, my dad. So he put a man in a coma in Wales once and give a dodgy, he was fighting under a different name because back then you could only fight so many fights a month. So my dad was, obviously they were skinned and his family, his dad had poor of his lungs through working as a plasterer. So my dad said he was looking after the whole family. So my dad said, I was fighting under 3 different names just to go and put food on the table, son. He said, so this one particular night, he put the guy in a coma. The guy looked like he was going to die. So then my dad had to give his real name. He was held all night in Wales, in Swansea. But obviously it was a very, very tough sport back then. People don't realise people weren't boxing for like what they are now, for like, it's like a business, or they were boxing for like endorsements and sponsorship. Back then you was fighting to put food on the table. It was a total different sport to what it is now. And it was a lot harder then.
So it obviously was imprinted in your genes.
Yeah, because obviously my granddad was a bare knuckle fighter. His dad was a bare knuckle fighter. They was called the Fighting Dyers of Lewisham. And next year, I've obviously been researching this for my dad's book. So I paid a boxing historian £250 to come up with all my dad's fight career. So he's come up with a great big folder for me. It's brilliant. So I've just given that to the woman who's writing my dad's book, Julie Shaw. She's a #1 crime writer in the North. She's written like 20 #1 bestsellers.
You heard her?
Yes.
She's a very, very big writer. Yeah, she's like the Martina Cole of the North. Oh. So obviously I still have, where I've been sort of, me and Paige been together a year yesterday. So we've been enjoying our life. So I've got to knuckle down in the new year and put my dad's book together.
How did your mum and dad meet?
My dad had a nightclub called the Westerner in Peckham. So, which was like, it was a wild house. So my dad run a security team there. You had one of my dad's close friends was Georgie Cooper, no relation of Henry Cooper. He played Jack Nicholson's Minder in the Batman film, the big bald guy who carries the stereo about with a big handlebar moustache. Well, George was like, they had their own door team there. It was my dad's club with Joey Collier, a scrap metal guy from Peckham. And my mum was one of the waitresses, but she said she couldn't stand my dad. She said, he was a bit old because he was a lot older than my mum. But my dad said, she said he sort of grew on her because my mum was like young, petite, blonde. And she goes, he used to get on my nerves a little bit, Jim. And then my dad was like, and he kept trying and trying. I think after 7 months, she said, I finally went on a date with him and he told me he had a penthouse flat. She said, I didn't know it was a fucking top floor council flat in Forest Hill with all birds shit over the windows and he still had his ex-girlfriend living there. But they ended up getting well. My dad's, everyone's given them 6 months. When they first got together, they said, 6 months. But my mum, they lasted until my dad died of dementia, which was in October 20th, 2016.
Wow.
And then my mum died 5 years ago. 5 years later, she died. She was only 73. My dad was in his 80s, late 80s. And my mum was 73. She died last year with terminal cancer. She had it for a year. And that, Sean, was the sort of wake-up point in my life. I was going out still doing trade, still at it and doing bits and pieces. But my mum died. I moved back home to my mum and she sort of started talking to me, telling me stories, just saying, look, Jim, I want to leave you all my money because my sister's had a lot of money herself. She didn't need the money what my mum had. And my mum said, look, can't you just listen about life? She told me so much knowledge. And to this, I actually have listened to everything she said. And I spent that year with her and she died in a nursing home. She was actually bringing her own excrement up in her mouth. And she wouldn't take any tablets, no medication. She went out on her terms. She ate what she did. Her belly used to get inflamed. They used to have these nurses come around, Macmillan nurses, and they used to have to inject her stomach to take it down. But she wanted to eat what she wanted. She was smoking. She'd have a glass of Laurent Perrier every couple of days. She done it on her terms. And then I always thought she was such a strong lady. And it really, even to this day, even when I think about things, what my mum told me, and I know they're looking up over me, and I do want to do the best of my life now. I've dropped out all the toe rags, all the criminals. They would never. There's no honour amongst thieves, Sean. Listen. These people would grass you and do bad things. All this, they don't touch women and children. Listen, these people have got no morals. The real people, the people go to work 9 to 5 and look after their families. They're the real heroes. And the nurses, they're the real unsung heroes. And I want to be a straight worker now, earn a straight pound note, go on lovely holidays with my girlfriend. I want to be with my girlfriend all the time and have lovely meals and enjoy life.
So growing up, was it just you and your sister?
Yeah, my sister Carrie. Yeah, she's 2 years younger than me. She married a North London guy, so she went over the other side. And my mum said she went over that side. But no, she had a beautiful wedding. They had Terry Adams' wife was there, Ruth. A lot of notorious characters from North London were there. But yeah, no, so they got married. But it was, my mum wasn't really close with my sister. My sister was. I don't want to say it sound a bit bitter or twisted towards my sister because we haven't spoke since my mum done her will, because obviously I got left 3/4 of the will, and my mum's reasons were because I didn't have really anything, but I'd been a son when she was dying. I was there every single day when she was dying for a year, when my sister went over 3 times, which I think personally, I'm disclosing this now, I think it's disgusting. As a daughter, I think it's disgusting how she treated my mum, and then she expected to have all that money. But she didn't. She wasn't a daughter.
But were you close growing up? Protective of older brothers?
I was always protective if she had boyfriends. I'd always go and punch their heads in if they started, or if they dropped her out. I'd always go and beat them up. But no, we wasn't really. I mean, actually, we weren't that close. Actually, I remember being at a bus stop once. I drove past. I was 17 with BMW, waving at her, and it was like a cold night. We weren't that close. Actually, no. But we were still like. My mum and dad were sort of big characters. And I sort of grew. I always wanted to be like my dad, which I could never be. I couldn't be 1/10 of the man he was. But I'm trying my hardest now to be a better person, and I like the person I've become.
So your first arrest then was gone at school. What was your second arrest?
My second arrest was, funny enough, for a theft of a Suzuki Jeep roof. Do you remember that? My mum had a little Suzuki Jeep, and I took the roof off one day, and I'd frayed all the bit what you had to fold it into the front bar. She had like one of these SJ410 things, and I remember outside the club one night, and I had the car, and it was right next to a fire station. I thought, that's got the same roof. And I knew how to take it off. So I took the car. Like an idiot, I was being fucking filmed by a fucking fireman over the road. So I got nicked for theft at 17, went to court and got a £550 fine. And then obviously about 6 months later, no, when I was 21, so it was, we'd had a sale or return off a jeweller in Hatton Garden. on about 50, 60 grand's worth of watches. We took them, we didn't end up taking them back. We just sold the watches and went out partying. And I ended up getting a theft charge for that. And then the judge, I remember going to Croydon Crown Court it was, and the judge went, no, this is, you're going to get a term of imprisonment. This is a short, sharp shock to make you never come back to prison again. And I remember getting 6 months, and it was like, I was like, it's like my head was spinning round. And what was worse, when I went downstairs, as they put you onto the van, you're in the handcuffs. It was some prick I used to go to school with, a right arsehole. He was one of the Group 4 security guys. And he was like grinning like anything because we never saw eye to eye at school. And it was like, he's having his last moment of glory. And I thought, you dog. So they took me to Highdown, which was over Banstead. And I remember going in and they give you your little fireproof blanket and your bedding and your bowl and your razor and whatnot. And I remember, like, in the morning, you just hear it was just surreal sound. You could hear it echoing, and you just hear the screws with it. Like, I think they used to do it on purpose, swing their keys, you'd hear the jingle jangle, and then you'd opening up the doors. They go breakfast. I was sentenced on a Friday, but I was only there for about 6 weeks, and I was sent over to Ford Prison, which was really cool. But I met it was then I thought, no, but I quite like this. I went, and it was like, I'd met the Queen's cousin was there. He was, they owned the Dewhurst butcher's chain. His name's Michael, let me think of his name. I'll tell you what, you can Google this. He cut his wife's head off and drove about in a Mini for like 2 months. He was the Queen's cousin. So he'd been detained in a hospital and he was in Ford. Michael, what was his name? And I'll tell you what, who was there. Ernest, who was the one, Ernest, who swindled Nissan out of all the millions. Ernest Shannon, he swindled Nissan out of like tens of millions of pounds. But even in the prison, they was having their own private caterers come in and sitting at the table, eating what they wanted. And I used to think, one day I went to the library and I went, no, sorry, Mr. Shannon's having a private work to me. But then I saw that money is power and power and these people, but in Ford you had a better type of arsehole, so to speak. It was more, and there was a lot of like people in for famous crimes, like, and you had like the sort of, or it was like if the footballer got done for drink driving, they'd always be sent to Ford. But that was the first and only time I ever went to a decap prison. Then after that, then I was away for attempted murder, handling stolen goods, commercial burglary. I was a full-time career criminal.
So which was first after them?
No, then I was just bang at it. Basically, when I come out of prison, my mum would come and visit me there. She went, this will be the first and the only time I'll visit you. If you choose this as your career, I will never ever come and see you again. And I felt sorry. Me and my mum spoke at great lengths when she was dying. And I said, Mum, she went, why did you go down there? I said, Mum, to be honest, cocaine got hold of me for a lot of years, Sean. It got hold of me for like a good 20 years. But I loved that lifestyle. I loved going out it was a great thing for me. And I was out with my friend the other day, funny enough, Phil. He used to play Des Barnes in Coronation Street. And he went through similar things, Phil. And we were talking the other day and he was telling me stories when he was on Coronation Street. And obviously, all these people have been friends for me and mine for 30 years. I've got a lot of celebrity friends. And it's like, everyone's had that same problem with drugs. And I think it's drugs, what people don't realise, really do get older people. Sometimes, and I've got an addictive personality anyway. So if I like something, it's...
Full on.
It's full on, yeah. But now, I'm not going to lie. I do. And every now and again, I might grab. If I'm out and I'm drunk, someone goes, "Oh, do you want a little line?" I might have a little bump, but I'm not really. For me now, it's all about going out for a nice meal, being with my girlfriend, going shopping, sitting indoors, watching a nice thing on Netflix, and having loads of sweets. It's like my whole life has gone to complete 360. I'm probably like boring old twat now, but no. I like my whole life's changed, and I think that a lot more needs to be done with drugs. I think drugs is the real root of all evil.
So when you moved out of your parents' house, where did you go?
I was staying with friends. I had my own flat, first of all, I had one in Canary Wharf. I had one over in the Isle of Dogs. But then obviously when money started going down, I was sofa surfing with various friends. Or if we went out on a mad one, a lot of the guys I was working with were all bring smack guys. Bundles of money. There was so much money in South London in the 90s, big money. And obviously my friends we'd go drinking Blackheath and we'd go to the Hamilton Hotel. They would hire the whole hotel, and it'd just be for the faces. You'd have like people like Danny Roth, who was a hitman who killed Charlie Wilson. You'd have Jimmy Brand, Johnny Fleming, who was extradited back from Miami. These are like very famous criminals and very powerful criminals. And Eugene Carter, who was a massive drug dealer. We'd all be at the hotel, everybody partying. No one would have to pay for drinks, and then there'd always be we'd stay there. Or if I'd go back to my friends over in North London, stay with him for a few days in Hatton Garden, and then we didn't know where from one day to the next where you'd end up. And I like that bohemian lifestyle. It was nice. It was like, sometimes I'd be sleeping in the car. If things were bad that week, I'd be sleeping in the back of the car. And I can remember like my legs really hurting. So it wasn't always as glamorous as people think it is.
So your crime started to escalate.
Really bad, Sean, yeah. And the coke, then it got worse, and it would be like my godfather was one of London's richest men. His name was Johnny Till, Teal. He was in the Sunday Times rich list. He come from the Peabody estate in South London, which was known as like where the scum of the earth lived. It was social housing at its worst level. And he come out, in the 60s, he started doing reconditioned engines and gearboxes for cars. And it just went massive. He ended up buying his own massive yacht in south of France. He had a house in Bel Air. He had his own private jet. And when I was growing up in the 80s, he had a Ferrari with 1 John, a Porsche with John 1, and a Rolls Royce with 007. He owned that number plate is priceless. He still got it. And it was on a white Rolls Royce Silver Spirit. And when I was christened in that Rolls Royce with 007. So my mum said, you was always a flashback. And what chance did you have? You had like all this going on in your life. So no, I mean, and I always like to stand out from the crowd. I've always been a flash fucker, but now, so I'm very humble now. And I do realise I do wish I'd have done things different, if I'm honest. I wish I'd have gone to... But in saying that, when I hear of all people like these bankers and these stockbrokers, they're worse than the criminals on the coke and deranged and debaucherous. They're like really bad.
So you said your mum tried to put the brakes on, but you didn't listen. Was there anyone else talking?
My dad never... See, my dad, he'd say to me, son, slow down, what are you doing with these people, blah, blah, blah. He never, ever told me off, Sean, never. If he would have put discipline in me from a young age, I could have probably gone on to be a great boxer. But he never... My dad was very laid back. He was too laid back. My mum was like... my poor mum, I'd probably put her in that early grave. But she tried and tried. I mean, my sister went up... My sister was the bad child. As we were kids, my sister would be out taking LSD at bloody... she got done for racist remarks at a private school, got chucked out of private school with one of the great train robbers' daughters. She was ruthless, my sister. And then she got chucked out of the next school. And then she left school with no qualifications. And I left school with loads. And through my mum, she got her a job in Price Waterhouse through a friend she had there. Then my mum got a job in Wall Street in America. But my mum funded her to get her diploma in stockbroking. So my mum done all this for my sister. And she never acknowledged that, like, what my mum done for her. But my mum tried with me, Sean. When I went up to Hull, I got married, and she tried to throw those financial carrots, but it was just, I think I was always destined to be a career criminal.
But was that sorry, I can't. Was that an example of your father, though, with your father?
I think it was growing up and seeing my dad and his friends, but then I didn't realise what they'd done. They'd built up their reputations through like they'd come from nothing in their lives. They'd all had poor families. They'd gone on. I thought I could just be 19 and be like turning to my dad. And real life isn't like that. You have to work and years and years of getting respect and getting a good name and being involved with various firms. I mean, but I saw my dad like that and just thought I was just going to be like that. And life isn't like that. You have to build up respect and rapport and build up relationships with people.
So what was your longest stretch in the next prison?
My longest one was when I was in Hull. I was up for 2 Section 18s on a doorman. I knocked 2 doormen out in a club called The Office, lap dancing club in Hull. And I was on bail for those. And then I'd had a row. Someone attacked me at a party, a big bodybuilder, and he had me in a headlock. I've grabbed a knife off the side, trying to get him off me. And so obviously his face is cut to ribbons. Then I've turned around and stabbed him there, and it pierced his bowel. So I've left, and then he still didn't have it, he's still holding me. So I've grabbed the cooker grate, the cast iron bit off the cooker, smashing him with that. But there was a girl standing behind me, and obviously she's got knocked out. Everyone who was in the party was all on the floor, and I'm the only one standing. But obviously the cooker had like little curved things on it, so it's caught my head. So there's blood from my own DNA's all over the place. I had no chance. So the next day, I remember I got home and I saw police cars coming into my house in Beverley, near the racecourse. I had an apartment there, and I jumped out the window. I had a bag, and a friend of mine picked me up, took me back to London. She was a film producer, funny enough, and she thought it was all right. She loved it. She thought it was great. And then I was on the run, got caught on the 29th of December 2004. Like 30 police come kicking their up. They went through the front windows and everything. But they caught me in West Yall, which is over in Epsom in Surrey, took me back to Hull as a security risk. And I remember they moved me to Strangeways Army Jail. I lost my train. I had one train. It was all psychological what they was doing to me. And then they sent me to psychologists. I had to see psychologists. No judge or court would listen to my story because they said what went on in that party wasn't of a normal human being.
Why did he do that to you, though?
We'd had a fight. He tried to hit me, try and chin me, but he couldn't. So then he's grabbed me because obviously he hasn't chinned me. He's tried to grab me. So he's a big bodybuilder at the time. But then his statement was really detrimental to me. I mean, it said he was in fear of his life. He was like he was having flashbacks. Obviously, the personal victim statement was, and obviously the crime scene looks. Even when I saw it, and I was showing people in prison, they went. And I said to my solicitor, "What am I looking at?" And he went, "Like L plates." I went, "Well, what's L plates?" He went, "Life." I went, "Whoa, he's not fucking dead." He went, "No, Jimmy, you're on 2 Section 18s on the doorman. This is a Section 18. This is attempted murder, like Section 18 with 10. He said, you're on an afraid charge. He said, and the 2 other people have been attacked violently at a party. He said, this is when IPPs, 2004, 2005 were coming about. And I went, no, I was shit myself. And then I had to see a psychologist because when I went in front of the judge, he went, no, he said, not until Mr. Tippett's health, mental health has been assessed. So I saw the psychologist, and then they said I was totally all right. And they said, and the court went, no, we want to get a better one from London because we don't believe him. So the court don't even believe their own psychologist. That they really. And when I said to my sister, he went, I'm afraid I can't represent you anymore. He went, what do you mean? He went, I've been told by this has come from the judges that no solicitors in Hull can represent you.
And what was the altercation over?
It was over, but they said, but what it was, funny enough, Tony Thompson, who wrote the book Gangs, A Journey into the Heart of the British Underworld, had featured me in a big news article in The Observer called Hull is Britain's New Drug Capital. And there was a big picture of me standing by a Ferrari, and it said, former armed robber Jimmy Tippett Jr. has made home in Hull with some of the most notorious faces. And then the local papers then started calling us the Mafia men. So then obviously it become like it was a political case. So obviously I couldn't have a solicitors in Hull. I had to employ someone from Tucker's Solicitors it was in Manchester, and they ended up and they said to me, do you know we've got to get this case out of Hull because you're going to get a life sentence. I went, what do you mean? He went, well, we'll try and get you a low tariff. I went, no, what do you mean low tariff? I don't want a life sentence. I can't have a life sentence. And he went, no. So we ended up getting the case moved to Leeds, which was really good, and it was a recorded judge on the day from London. So the judge, upon reading the papers, went, the guy was ready to give evidence, but apparently then he didn't want to give evidence. He said that he'd had gunshots at his house and bits and pieces, which was, I don't know what happened, but it was a long time ago, so I get a bit of amnesia. But no, it was so he'd had gunshots at the house, he'd been threatened on the day of the court. The woman had told so many stories, the lies, that it was so conflicting that they had to throw. They didn't want to use her because they said she was a bad witness. So the CPS come back and said, "Would you go guilty to a Section 20 with excessive self-defence for 15 months?" And I thought, well, that means I get out today because of the time I've done. I went. So I said to my sister, what? He went, listen, bite their hand off right now. He said, I'm not even going to accept your answer. I'm telling him yes. So I went, yes. But then as soon as that happened, the judge went, we've got to stop the case. Apparently, there's police officers from Humberside who want to talk to Mr. Tippett in holding cells. Went downstairs. They said, we're arresting you now for 2 Section 18s and an afraid charge and another nightclub in Hull. So that then stopped me because I would have been released from court that day, Sean. And they went, well, now, so then I've had to go on another trial, which then all these people in the Hull, this was back in Hull, so there was a political case. So in Hull, I had all these juries come in and they were going, all right. They looked like they were just on the local council estate in Hull. I thought, this is brilliant. I'm getting not guilty here. So I put my Specsavers glasses on. I had my little I had my little Pringle jumper on with my shirt hanging over, tripped up when I was giving evidence, like moody trip up, and they was all laughing. On lunchtime, the judge went, no, I want to discharge the jury. I went, what do you mean discharge the jury? He went, no, they was all very fond of Mr. Tippett. He said it looked like it was going Mr. Tippett's way. Mr. Tippett's been playing this court like a circus, being with his little antics. So the judge saw what I was doing. I was making out I was writing all of it along. I was playing. Of course I was playing the fucking judge and the jury. But then obviously, when they brought in a new jury, it was like they brought in fucking police academy. They was all stood there in fucking, there was emotionless. It was like they was all robots. They was all stood there like that, glaring at me. So I was found guilty of an affray, which I didn't do. And the judge instantly gave me an 18-month consecutive, which was on top of. So he could have done it concurrently, and I would have still got out that day. But then I was found not guilty of the 2 Section 18s, which I was guilty of, and I wasn't guilty of the non-violent affray. But he gave me the maximum sentence, and then give me another 6 months. So I ended up with 34 months. Then he put me on MAPA, which is this had just come out as well. It's called Multi-Agency Public Protection. So they considered me to be a danger to the public. So when I was released on bail, when I was released from prison, I ended up being in a place called the Wolds. And when I was released from there, I had to see the police, the probation, the social services. They all sit around once a week and have a meeting on you. And so obviously I got nicked again on the 6th and the 6th and the 6th, 666, and I called it my book Devil's Sentence, and got nicked for 2 Section 18s again. I'd had a row with somebody, 2 Section 18s, but then all those charges were dropped. So then it took me 8 months to get parole and get back out.
Where did they send you?
That was so I'd moved back down to London to be with my cousin over in Orpington in Kent, and then they took me back to Highdown.
And what was it like in Highdown back then?
Highdown was okay. It was funny enough because I knew loads of people in Highdown, so it was a local jail to London. So and Surrey, so I knew everyone there, and there was a lovely prison officer there called Mr. Calloway. He's been there for years. He became really friendly with Terry Adams as well. He's really nice. He used to bring me food in and like cans of Coke. And he was a nice guy, Sean. You know, like not all prison officers are bad. You do get 90% of shit. But then saying that, I'd said to everyone else in a prison with 100 people on a wing, 97 of those people are shitbags. They're scumbags. I would write. Sometimes you'd have a more intelligent conversation with a prison officer than you would an inmate, and that's facts. And obviously now I went back to prison. Obviously, I was set up in 2019. I'd done some business in Brighton with some people. It went a bit pear-shaped. I was walking in York on the 17th of December 2019. I was in York with some friends. We ended up partying back in a hotel room, and next thing I heard, Jimmy, I've looked out, I've seen blue lights everywhere. So I had an 8th of Coke on me. I've put that down, took my trousers. I'm thinking, I'm not going to be, I've done nothing wrong. So then I said, put your hand on your head and do pigeon steps towards us. And as I've looked there was a helicopter. There was dogs outside of me. And I was like, I thought, I've been on it for like 5 or 6 hours. I'm doing pigeon steps, but I'm looking at all these red dots all over me, guns. I'm thinking, your head's spinning. I'm like, and then it's bang. It's like being what? And I was like, and I remember the cop hit me with a gun. And he'd done me a rear stack for like his safety. And I was thinking, I was trying to get the arms round to get the gear out to empty it. And I remember we got back to York Police Station, and it was like surreal. And they went, we're arresting you for an armed robbery at Liberty's nightclub in Brighton with 60,000. You held a gun in someone's head and took 60,000 out safe. I went, don't know what you're talking about. You said, what? You said yes. I went, no, I didn't fucking say yes. I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So then obviously when we was at the counter and he's reading the charges out, I've got the Coke out the top and tried to swallow it, but the bag was too big. And so the copper is strangling me and I'm on the floor, but the copper, I give me his due. I don't want to get him. So he's going to me, just don't swallow it and I will let, I said, I'm going to get recalled over his coat. It won't go with the police. I mean, it won't go. He just looked at me in the eyes and said, it won't go. I will destroy it. But I got arrested for the Coke. But funny enough, when the police from Brighton picked me up the next day, there was no Coke. So he did stick to his word. And he later messaged me on Facebook when I got out of jail and said, I stuck to my word. I just didn't want to see you swallow that amount and you would have died. Yeah. So they're not all police aren't that bad. But Brighton, they did set me up. So I eventually, a friend of mine called Paul Anderson from Manchester, he used to own lots of nightclubs in Liverpool. He was the one who went round where we was on the 27th of November, where they said I'd done a robbery, went round to Leeds, all the bar owners' hotels, and got CCTV and statements, sent it to my solicitor. So they dropped the robbery charge, but they said, but the probation still deemed, because the gun was mentioned, said that because of my past and my name, that I'd have to go through to the parole board. So I got released on April the 4th, 2020, coming out of the prison, Rochester prison where I was in. It was like a ghost town. I said, can I get a taxi? I've got 2 big bags. I went, can't get a taxi. We're COVID. I went, what do you mean? Walking along the streets, there's no one on the streets. I'm walking down the road, it's like a beautiful summer's day, but there's no one about. And it was like being a zombie, one of these films. It was like there was no one. And I thought, I got to the train station and said, oh, you've got to wait 2 hours. There's only special trains running for like key workers. I went, I've just been released from prison. And he went, no, you still got to wait for 2 hours. So I remember it was just like, it was mad. It was like, I couldn't believe it.
Going back to the situation with the doormen then, what was that about?
Do you know what? I was just a fucker, Sean. I was in the hole one night. I was on the Coke, and if someone looked at me the wrong way, I was the first one to smash in. And these 2 guys were stood at the bar, they'd get a bit leery. And I remember chinning them both, I just went running over, and it was snowing at the time. It was around November. And I remember running outside, and it was like the red light districts of Hull. My friend had a lap dancing club called The Office. I was running up the road, and I remember kept falling over in the snow at the coppers. It was easy for the coppers, they just jumped on me. But I was on bail for that. So, but then that come to nothing. Well, obviously it didn't come to I got found not guilty.
And that wasn't the attempted murder charge?
No, that was on the another guy called Paul Morfitt. I can mention his name because it was all went through the criminal system, yeah. Paul Morfitt in a Hull.
And how did that come about?
Well, we'd been at a party at his house that night, and he was one of these ones who used to get quite aggressive and in drink and drugs. And obviously I'd been rowing with somebody at the party, and then he tried to sideline me, but I didn't go down, and obviously fighting back. And he was on the steroids. He was a big old unit then, and he was holding me in a headlock. And obviously, where the kitchen sink, this was in the kitchen party, there was a knife on the kitchen side. I didn't have a knife on me, and obviously they said this in court. They could, because obviously they put the little markers on, you know, where you had the crime scene, and obviously where I'd reached for the knife, I hadn't opened the drawer because I'd reached for it in being in fear of my life. That was the first thing that come to hand. If there'd been a rolling pin there, I would have grabbed the rolling pin and hit him with that. But there happened to be a knife on the draining board, and I grabbed that. So really, that's all taken into technicality of when you're arrested for something like that. If you go with a knife, that's premeditated. Or if I'd have opened that drawer, I would have been thinking of opening the drawer to get the knife. So because the knife was there, if there would have been a lemonade bottle, if there would have been anything closer, even if there was a tea towel, I would have used anything what I could grab because I couldn't breathe. Someone had me in a headlock, and he was a powerful, big, muscular guy.
Is it like you can only use so much force to fight back?
Yeah, they said because I'd already cut him on the knife on the face in several places. They said because I stabbed him once, that was excessive force of self-defense. They said that because I'd smashed it into him, but what happened was when I smashed it into him, it burst his bowel. So what happened was his poo was leaking into his belly. So when the next day when I was in the car, I think I delayed concussion because I kept pulling this. I said to this woman, Dawn, can you pull over so I can be sick? I was being sick, and my friend was on the phone at this stage, and he said, Jim, Paul Morphy's just died. I said, what do you mean? It's like he was winding me up a little bit, this guy. And he went, no, he's died. He said, but he's just been, they brought him back to life, but apparently he died 3 times on the operating table. Because because where he'd been stabbed, he didn't realise, and for like 2 or 3 hours. But already then, that his like excrement was leaking out of his bowel. So they opened him up from his groin up to his neck. He'd had like 400 stitches, I think 306 stitches. They said 372 stitches. Opened him up the front to obviously sort out the bowel. And it was like, obviously, because of that, and obviously his personal victim statement saying that he said that I was like an absolute lunatic. And obviously, with the judge, I'd had a lot of fights in Hull because I was a Cockney living up in a northern town. They said that basically I was a lunatic, and obviously my past and my name, and obviously being in the papers, bloody this and that. It was like it was an open shut case for them.
Yeah.
But obviously, I fought it. I saw 2 lots of psychologists, and I actually won.
So what is it about fighting? What does it give you?
Nothing now, Sean. Do you know what it is? I said, me and my girlfriend was out the other day. We was having words. So I think I'd had a text message on my phone. My girlfriend's very fiery, but she's got a right to, with me being who I am. But 2 guys come over and, are you all right? You're all right. She went, no, fuck off. She went, it's me having to go at him. It's not the other way round. But now, Sean, I know what I'm capable of. I haven't got to use that force, because if I use that force, I know it's going to end up with me being on a prison van. So I have to hold back. Don't get me wrong, I've been out 20, 30 times up north and could easily have a fight every night a week. But part of me knows what I can do, and I have to count to 10 and know that it's going to result in me being arrested, put in handcuffs, and potentially going straight to prison.
What enabled you to get to that point?
I think I've always been pretty angry. My mum was a very angry person. My dad was very calm. I saw my dad have one fight in his life I saw my dad have, and that was like, we was in the Spieler one night, and there was a guy called the Plum, and that's his nickname. I can't, he just stabbed, he'd come in my dad's friend's club, Harry Hayward, Flash Harry Hayward, a gangster from South London, and he had a champs in Deptford, and he come in the club one night and stabbed the doorman, opened the doorman up really bad. So Harry ran in the office, grabbed his gun, ran after him and shot him in the arse. Then the next day, he'd gone through to a nice guy called Bugsy, who works on the fruit stall in Lucia Market, and stabbed a samurai sword in him and opened him up, and like literally right opened it. The guy was a psychopath. He used to go in the pub and open people up for fun. You know, he was no one wanted to be around him. They called him the Plum. And he was having a shootout with one of the families from Deptford one day. My dad went, if fucking any winners get broke, fucking someone's paying for it. I went, Dad, what? My dad laughed at him. He was like, well, I've ducked back. But then one day someone said, Jim, he's just coming in the spill. He's coming in the spill. And it was like a flat above the kebab house. So as he was coming in, my dad went running over. He had like his suit on, and the geezer's come up with a big knife, and I remember my dad just went crash, one right hand, and my dad hit him. His face, it looked like Sean, it was like something out of a cartoon. His face went all distorted, and it was like his face was like I've never seen my dad. And my dad hit him and took the knife off him and then rammed it straight in his shoulder, like rammed it straight. He's got a big blade. My dad just rammed it straight in his shoulder, and it pierced him to like where the carpet was. I think when they come round, they couldn't get him out because the carpet was like, the knife was so wedged in. And I was at the top of the stairs. They went, Jim, get young Jim away. So we went down the back of the fire exit, And my dad had a Rolls Royce at the time. We got in a Rolls Royce, we drove home. My dad went, nah, son, I was only fucking about that. He said, don't listen, don't. I was at 13, and my dad went, no, I was only fucking about something. You didn't see what you saw. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, my dad, like, but I saw my dad do it, and he hit him so hard. And obviously, growing up around Lewisham and those areas, I heard the stories about my dad. And obviously, when we walked in places, everyone went, oh, everyone stood up, or everyone wanted to be his friend. And obviously, being my dad was a famous boxer, he was always in the boxing news. And then I'd be at school, one of the PE teachers would say, oh, look, I've got this magazine, your dad was in it last night. There's a big thing, a big thing on my dad. And then I started, I started like thinking, hang on a minute. And I'd see my mum and dad, I'd see my friends at school, their dads would drop them off in like Ford Fiestas and for whatever. And then my mum and dad was just, or they'd come to the open evening, they'd be walking in like the fucking stars of the show. It'd be like we was at the BAFTAs or something. And you see all my friends going, look at your mum and dad, they look so glamorous. And it was as a kid, I was like, fucking hell, I love this. This is what I want.
I mean, you speak so highly of your dad. What were the best and worst memories of him?
There's no worse memories apart from when he got dementia when he was 80. That was, for me, really, really hard. To see somebody you love who's the most powerful man on the planet. To me, my dad, he was my hero. And seeing my dad get dementia and going into a psychiatric unit, and we had to go to the psychiatric unit, and it was, a lot of probably viewers won't remember the film. You would probably remember Sean, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
It was literally like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and it was just, I was laughing, me and my mum was laughing at the people in there, because it was highly amusing, because you couldn't register it. And then obviously, and I would wind my dad up, and he goes, son, what you keep fucking winding him up for? And then he'd go to me, who's that woman there? I went, that's your wife, you silly bastard. He went, oh, she's nice looking, though. He said, she's a nice lady. He went, is she really? I went, and my mum was like crying, because she went, how does he remember you? You're a little fucker, and he doesn't even know me. I've been married to him for 40 odd years. But to see that decline, and then obviously when he went into the nursing home, his own brother-in-law, who was visiting him up at this stage, Sean, ended up in the same nursing home next door, and they didn't even know who each other was. So that to see, and then one day, my dad was being manhandled by one of the nurses. And my dad's best friend was a guy called Paul Moriarty, who played Hatchet Harry in Lock, Stock. Yeah. And he also played Razors in Long Good Friday. Paul ended up grabbing hold of the nurse and went, if ever you do that again, there will be a problem. Do you understand me? And everyone recognised him because he's always been on telly and that. And obviously that stopped. Then Dave Courtney obviously visited my dad as well. And obviously a lot of the nurses went, oh, Dave Courtney's been up. And my dad had a lot of other infamous friends who used to visit him. And obviously then it stopped. But obviously it was, to see that was my worst, to see 4 years. When he actually died on the 20th of October 2016, my mum phoned me. I was just getting in from a party in Brighton, and she went, Jim, your dad's died. I went, you messed about? She went, why would I say something like that? And it was just me being out my head and just didn't really understand what was going on. And I was a big weight was lifted off my shoulder. I was glad, because my dad, if he could see how he was, he wouldn't want to live like that. He would have said, son, why couldn't you put one in my head and just be gone with me? He said, because you wouldn't let anyone that you love listen.
The stories you told us about your dad then, it's all like people are getting bullied or victimised, and he's got this sense of justice. Yeah. Where did he get that sense of justice from?
He had very good parents, Sean. His mum was, funny enough, she was they come from a Welsh family originally, but she was born in Hoxton in East London. His dad was in the army. His dad was a sergeant major in the army. His grandfather, they was all army men. And one of my great-great-grandfather, he was awarded bravery services. They was fighting. He got beheaded when they was coming into battle in World War I. He was Samuel Tippett. He was you can Google. Someone sent me a thing on it, a historian, and he got beheaded in World War I. Yeah, holy so he got awarded loads of medals for obviously going into battle. Which they was very army people. There was no criminality in any of the family. My dad was obviously the first person to go professional, because obviously his dad and his dad were bare knuckle boxers. But they was army men, and they was hard grafters. They was workers. They weren't apart from my dad's brother-in-law Fred. He was a criminal, but my dad obviously fell into with the boxing and crime that goes hand in hand.
He sounded like the Robin Hood of the underworld there.
Yeah, he was, but obviously he grew up with Ronnie and Reggie. Ronnie and Reggie were friends of his from the age of 12, but then my dad told me when he was young, he said, son, he said, look, the craze, he said, there's no value around them. He said, all these people put themselves around him. He said, look, they're all idiots, son. None of them have got any money. None of them have had a life like what I've had. My dad would go to New York. He would travel the world. He had friends all over the world. I mean, he knew Asa Arafat. He used to go meetings with him in the Park Lane Hilton. He knew a lot of the Saudi royal families. He used to arrange security for them. I don't know whether I can say, I won't say the name, but one of the princes got accused of a lady tried to set him up in a London hostess club. And my dad went and spoke to this club, and got everything retracted because they was trying to sting him. And my dad then got called to the Hilton Hotel where they had a penthouse suite. There was the main one of the kings were there. He sat my dad down. He said, "What would you like?" And my dad said, "I'll tell you what you can give me. Give me £40." And the king looked at my dad and went, "What do you mean?" He went, £40. He went, "What do you mean?" He went, "That's my expenses up here today." He said, "I'll give you thousands. What do you want?" My dad went, "No." And with that, that's what I didn't realise. My dad, obviously didn't know it, but my dad was doing justice in his right way. But then his legacy stands this day, Sean. I can go to certain places in London, and obviously my dad's best friends were like Bernie Ecclestone, Sterling Moss, Frank Waterman, who was a Speedway Motor King racer, who went on to be a big gold bullion robber. There was Georgie Walker, the boxer who built Brent Walker up, lost it all. Built Bright Marina, and then he went off to Russia and his daughter married into royalty. My dad's friends were like, every one of them had like the most fascinating story like he did. And to grow up, Donald Sutherland was my dad's lifelong friend. So to grow up as a kid and see all these people, and obviously film directors and producers were always at the house because they always wanted to get involved my dad in something. And it was like, I really loved that.
Because he obviously had a lavish lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
But how did he go from, obviously, he had 3 different names boxing, putting food on the table, to then turning to this.
He got into
celebrity
nightclubs. He had my dad had a lot of black friends, and in the 60s, a lot of West Indians had come over to London, and my dad opened one of the first black reggae clubs called the El Partido in Lewisham, and they used to have Jimmy Cliff, one of the reggae singers, and a lot of the big people. And my dad had Roger Daltrey working for him as a cleaner. He used to sweep up the floors, and Roger Daltrey used to say to my dad, "Can't you get me into the singing?" And my dad was like, one of his best friends, one of his biggest fans was a guy called Ronnie Scott, a famous jazz musician.
Remember?
Who had Ronnie Scott's club. And I've got pictures of my dad with his second boxing manager, Benny Huntman, whose partner was none other than Maya Lansky. There was a book called Shadowlands. I mean, I've got a photographic memory, so I remember everything. But no, Benny Huntman he was the biggest boxing promoter, but he was also American partners with Maya Lansky. So they started all the casinos in London 60s. So then when Freddie Mills, who was my dad's boxing promoter, got shot dead, my dad was one of the main suspects along with Benny Huntman, because they said that it was Ronnie Crader. But there was another story besides that Freddie Mills, the boxing promoter, was the necktie strangler. A lot of women were getting strangled and killed around London. It was like Yorkshire Ripper type of thing, but in English they called it the necktie strangler. And a lot of them said it was Freddie Mills who was the necktie strangler.
And nobody got caught?
No, there's been lots of... I've been interviewed about it. It's quite an interesting story. It's something now... I love journalism now, and it's something I maybe go back... I've got such a vast knowledge of things and a photographic memory of growing up in that life. It's something I'm fascinated with now. I would like to do a lot more books, but help other people to do books. And obviously work with people co-writing those books, because it's something I'm really, really interested in.
So the movies always shows like the craze as being the top of the London world. They're doing the deal with the American Mafia. What's the reality?
No, I'll tell you the truth. And a lot of people would say all these stories about this one and that one, and I do know the real truth. It was a Liverpool guy, and he was my dad's friend. His name was Scouse Norman Johnson. They called him Scouse. That was his nickname. His name was Norman Johnson. He's got a great book called Black Eyes and Blue Blood. I'll get you the book, Sean. I've got a signed copy indoors from Norman. He was one of my dad's closest friends. He went on to earn millions and millions. He was a bodyguard for the Princess of Oman. She ended up having an affair with him. Gave him jewellery and money like you couldn't believe. This was all in the newspapers. But Norman went over to America, and a guy who knocked the craze for 60 grand back in the 60s was a guy called John Francis. He ended up going over and working with Russell Bufalino, of the head of the Five Families in New York. And Russell Bufalino was working with my dad's friend Norman, and my dad used to go over and visit Russell Bufalino with Norman. And Russell Bufalino, there's a film, Joe Pesci played him in The Irishman.
Wow.
And obviously they was involved big time. They say they weren't. They were involved in big time heroin. At the time, heroin was fetching a print, but in the films they say no, they would never touch drugs. It was heroin.
Goes back to Lucky Luciano, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
It was drugs. And listen, it's like Al Capone with prohibition. They was supply and demand. Heroin was a big thing in New York in the 70s and 80s, and they was earning. My dad said they used to come over with like sort of £500,000 in a suitcase. One day they got a suitcase open. There's £500,000. They had it all. My mum, I remember he got home to my mum. It's quite funny. We lived in a place called Keston, and it was like called the Beverly Hills of Kent. If you were doing well, you lived there. we had a 5-bedroom Tudor-style house. And I remember Lenny McLean dropped me off one day. We drove into the drive, it had a big, massive archway, and he went, fucking hell, your dad's doing good. And he, what the fuck's he up to? And my dad come home once from New York, and he had a suitcase. And I remember I was just getting up to school, 7:30. I used to get the 7:45 bus, the 146 to school in Hayes in Kent. And my dad had stacks of like $100 bills. And my mum started counting. She was straight. My mum was like, bang, she's the accountant. She's up counting on the bed. The dogs, he's going, go do it. My dad went, oh, can you do me a teacher? No, you go and do it. I'm counting. So I come over at school at 4:00, and my mum was still counting. So that shows you. And these are $100 notes.
So was your mum the brain behind the brawn?
She took care of the money, but she was the accountant. She was a bookkeeper by trade. So she used to work in the Playboy Club in the 60s as well. She was a Playboy bunny. But she told me that obviously the Playboys was the first sort of female escorts. My mum said, look, I'm not proud of this. And I'm not saying things which are out of term, because my mum confided in me, but it's my story, and if it goes to film one day, I've been offered a lot of people coming through to me now because of these podcasts and offering me the most fantastic. I mean, I've had a big soap on TV have offered me a part, a 6-month opportunity. So just through doing those podcasts, you don't realise the opportunities what come through. But my mum, she said most of the Playboy bunnies were escorts who used to go back with rich businessmen. It was something sorted out financially with the person at the club who they're hostesses for that club. And Victor Lowndes, who used to work for Hugh Hefner, was he was like a pimp, so to speak. He would get the girls, but it was all because it was all so beautiful and in a desirable location. It wasn't like prostitution, but it was all the bunny girls, but most of them were escorts who would go off with rich clients.
So there's all these stories about the crazed sexuality. Do you know the truth?
Yeah, my dad said, well, listen, it's everyone. You got to be very careful what you say now, haven't you? But no, my dad said, listen, they were both a pair of the start, son. He said, listen, that's what, my dad was old school. He didn't dress it up at how it was, but he said that's how they were. He said, son, they weren't. He liked Reggie. He said, Ronnie, you couldn't trust. He said, because he was so dosed up on medication. He said, my dad took Mike Reid, the comedian, once to meet him. And they were sitting there, and Mike Reid said something a bit silly, and Ronnie went to glass him with a little. He was drinking brandy or whiskey, whatever he was drinking, and he went to glass Mike Reid. And my dad grabbed his wrist, and Ronnie went, Jim, you're the only man I'd let do that. And my dad said, but my dad said, son, I'm not bothered about him. I'd knock the two of them spark out. He said, but they would. He said, with Ronnie, I had to sit there and watch him all night long because he might take offence to that. Where Reggie would, where he stood, and Charlie. He said, Charlie's just a con man. But he was lovely. Charlie was just he had unfortunate thing of being the older brother to them two, and he never quite lived up to what they were. But my dad fought a guy called, I got the cuttings in my dad's book coming out. Ronnie Cray got beat, and Reggie Cray got beat by a guy called Peter Heckman, a boxer. And my dad it was during World War II, so my dad was fighting this guy in the ABA finals, and my dad beat him so bad in the first 50 seconds, the referee stopped the fight. And after that, because he'd beat Ronnie and Reggie, Ronnie came up to my dad and give him a bar of chocolate. And I went, my dad, it's so fucking what? And Dad went, but you don't understand, son, this is World War II. You couldn't get a bar of chocolate. Chocolate was on rations. He said, you go to the shop and maybe get half a little square. Where Ronnie, just give me a bar. He said, so that was our friendship. He said, so what we used to do, they used to go on trains, and they used to have like air guns. But they were telling me stories when they were kids, which no one probably knows because no one knew them at that age. But my dad said they used to get like sherbet fizz and put it in a water bottle and drink that out of a glass bottle, and that was like a fizzy drink. He said, but they used to go on the trains and fire their air guns at the tin signs. He said it was, and I said, fuck it was a bit boring, isn't it? But he said, we don't understand this when we were kids, son. We didn't have what you had now. He said, you didn't have all this stuff. But then obviously that was a lifelong friendship. But my dad did say to me, when I got older and the films were coming at me, I said to my dad, and then Reggie would get hold of my dad's number and phone him. My dad would then change his number. Like my dad didn't talk on the phone. My dad said, I can't have it round them, son. He said, look, all these people gravitate towards them. He said, but son, he said, there's no value around them. He said, they're like a wing mirror on the conker. I went, what do you mean a wing mirror on the conker? He went, but son, you played conkers, you got two conkers. He said, why would you have a wing mirror on it? There's absolutely no purpose of having a wing mirror on a conker. He said, with them, there's no purpose. He said, son, there's no value around them. He said, but listen, that's their life. That's how they want to live it. But my dad was always saying, he said, son, they weren't what you would think. There was a big gangster really in South London called Ronnie Olive, who was Freddie Foreman mentions in his book. He was the quiet man. He was like the Russell Buffalino of the London underworld. He was a quiet man. He lived in Bermondsey. He lived in a council place all his life, but he was the main man. Forget all the other families. He was the main man. Bigger than Richardson, bigger than everyone. Ronnie Olive. And he had a brother who was deaf and dumb. His son got shot dead, Joey, by a driving school instructor who was bullying the family. The guy went into a cafe in Mottingham in 2010, I believe, or 2009, walked in, shot him in the back of the head, laid the gun on the table, waiting for the police to come. But he was fed up with young Joey, bullying the family. Some straight goers, it's enough's enough, isn't it? But no, Ronnie Olive never spent a day in jail, like my dad, but commanded the respect for, like, he died at, I think he was 84, Ronnie, but he commanded respect for all the years he was actively involved in crime.
Do you think people like your dad never spent a day in jail because the craze took the heat off them?
I think my dad did say they used to love all that sort of glitz. But when my dad had straight businesses as well. So he had a security business which used to look after all the actors. So my dad looked after people like Tom Selleck, Richard Burton, Sophia Loren, and big stars like Frank Sinatra. He used to call my dad LP, and I went, "What's that, Daddy?" He went, "Leather Puncher." But they always used to drink LPR like Lauren Perry Rosé. But I remember visiting Frank with my dad in Coco Cabanas in 1985. It was Christmas, and we went over there on Concord, and we went over there, and it was like we went Christmas shopping. My mum and sister and both had fur coats on, and we went to Coco Cabanas, and we met Frank Sinatra and his son Francis Jr. And then they started scrapping. The dad and the son used to have a horrendous relationship, like really bad. He was like a sport little brat. He got kidnapped and everything, didn't he? So my dad ended up jumping in between them, and then it ended up cutting the night short. And Frank ended up meeting us in Little Italy, and we had something to eat. He come in, pick the bill up, but he was a bit of a. He was a bit of a. What's the word? When someone's he'd throw a tantrum, Frank. If they couldn't get their own way, they'd stamp their feet a little bit. And my dad said, "Son, we've got to realise these people are so famous. If they can't get things their own way, they really have a little paddy." And it's like my dad was like a babysitter, really. But meeting Frank was one of the biggest things for me as well.
That's what I was going to ask, because you've met so many famous people.
Well, Ray Winston used to come up the house.
Who had you the most starstruck out of all of them?
Do you know something? This is really funny. You'd probably love this. The most starstruck out of all the stars. Remember, I've met everybody. Ray Winston.
Really?
Ray Winston had just done a film in 1985 with my dad called, it was called Number One. It was based on and around Southeast London, Lewisham and Deptford. And Ray was one of the people in the film. He'd just done Scum, and he was regular on Minder. He was regular on Minder with my dad, because my dad used to be on Minder quite a lot, because Dennis Hawkman was a friend of his. And I remember we was at the premiere, and in Leicester Square, there was Paulie Yates, because she was married to Bob Geldof, played the snooker player in it. And we was there was Alfred Molina. Do you remember Alfred Molina? He played the dodgy copper in it. I'll get you the film shots. It's on the internet. Number One, it's called, by Bob Geldof's the main guy in it. But my dad's friend Paul Moriarty was in it. Phil Daniels, who was in Quadrophenia. There was Alison Steadman. There was a big star calls, but Ian Joy, for me, the Blockheads.
Yeah, I love that.
So he was in it because he had polio, didn't he? So he was like disabled in it. And I used to think, why is he walking funny? But they went, no, he's got a disability, son. But we was in the lift in the premiere, and Paulie Yates was in it. She had really hairy armpits, and she stunk. My mum went, "Oh, for fuck's sake." She's like one of those new age travellers, wasn't she? My mum went, "Fuck's sake, can someone get this? She stinks of BO." And then Paulie Yates looking at me, mum, and my dad went, Carol, calm down. She went, no, I can't be listening, all smelling all that shit. And then Bob Geldof is like, my dad said he was like, Bob Geldof, he was a bit strange as well. But no, we had so many funny things. Growing up as a kid, we would like, honestly, coming home from school would be like, I'd be walking home from school and like you'd look outside the house and then to see whose cars were there, and you think, you go into the house, like one day there was Barbara Windsor and Charlie Cray there, and it was like, and Diana Dawes was a good friend of the family. She had done the cabaret at one of my dad's clubs in Bromley, the Talk of the County, and it was like, as a kid, you'd think, God, it was like amazing to go home, and it was like mesmerising, really. I loved it.
So you had such a crazy upbringing. Did you ever have moments of quiet?
We used to go on holiday, but my mum and dad they used to play a Jewish game called Kaluki. It's like they play 13 cards and they go down in sets of. And as a kid, because my dad had gambling clubs, I've never gambled since, Sean. So really, that was a good thing. I've never ever. I play roulette, but I go with $100 or £100 wherever I am in the world, and I'll do $100. But normally, I'm really good. I mean, I've got a friend whose name was Devilfish. He was a famous poker player from Hull, and he was like he won £1 million in the World Series in '99. And he died a few years ago. He used to love partying. He used to have to wear the dark glasses and have the knuckle duster rings with devil fish. And my uncle was a guy called Bob the Butcher. Bob couldn't hold his hands up. He couldn't punch his way out of a wet paper bag. But he looked the part, and he was like, and one day Devilfish went, "Oh, you must know Bob the Butcher." I went, "That's my uncle. His name's Bobby Clay." He went, "Oh, he's a dangerous man." My dad went, "Fucking hell, Bob can't punch his way out of a fucking paper bag." But Bob had like, all these others had like made himself out to be like, he was saying he was my dad's business partner and all that, which he never was. But he was a good talker. But no, growing up, we met some great people, and I've got some fantastic friends now who I really, really love, and they've really stood by me through thick and thin. And that's what it's about.
So Charlie Cray then, what happened to him? Did he get set up?
Yeah, he got set up by the coppers. Funny enough, all over 500 quid. This is what my dad, we used to call him, my dad used to go, all Charlie wants is a monkey. Like, you'd be out and he'd try and tap someone up for a monkey you know I am, like, he'd always try and borrow a monkey, and then he'd have a monkey, and that was his nights drinking to give it Charlie Big Potatoes. And no, Charlie was with one of my friends, actually, Bobby Gould. They got nicked, and Ronnie Fields, it wasn't like it said, they said he was the biggest coke baron. They'd actually, I know the story because I was away with Bob. When he come off the unit in Belmarsh, I was in there in 97 with Harry Richardson, who later went on to be done for a murder, but he got not guilty. But Harry was lovely. He was like big enforcer for a few South London families. And we was all on House Block 4 in Belmarsh, and there was the Brinksmack guys, Tony White, who got acquitted, and there was Big Johnny Short, who was Bernie, but what's his name? The Bertie Smalls of Grass, he was one of his, who used to do the robberies with Bertie Smalls. And we was all on there, and Bobby said, they'd actually bailed the gear off some people over in Surrey so Charlie had told these coppers so many stories, it made him look like he was had direct links to the Colombian cartel, which in fact wasn't. He'd spoken his way into that sentence. But because of the name, it was cast iron. I mean, Bob got 6 years for passing the gear over, but Bob said it was me who went and got the gear on bail. He was the one who deserved it, but because of Charlie's name, he got the 11 and a half what he got. And it was like terrible. I mean, I saw Charlie in there before he went over to Parkhurst, and Charlie went, "Oh, your dad, Jim." He said, "I hate seeing you here like this." And you could just see he was in his 70s. Charlie, he looked really rough. He looked ill. It was horrible because Charlie had never had a pound note in his life. He looked the part. He was living out his own little fantasy in life, and the Cray name took him to his grave.
Even though your dad didn't do any jail, was he investigated?
Yeah, lots of times. He was investigated as being involved in a lot of contract killings. But my dad was one of those people, Sean, he would drive his car in the day, and whatever car he had, he would take to a car cleaners, which you didn't really have them, but he would go to a car cleaners, you'd always had a bottle of window lean in and kid you, I went, "Why are you going in that car?" He said, "Oh, Sally, if your mates are in a car, like to do," he said, "because I don't want their fingerprints in the car." What do you mean? He said, "Well, I see a lot of people, son." So even then, Sean, he was a very clever man. He'd have his phone cards. He never used a mobile phone, never used a house phone. Someone phoned him on a house phone. He said, "Oh yeah, I'll see you down the other place." I said, "Where's the other place?" Then he went, "Well, everyone knows where the other place is. That's where I go to snooker. They can meet me there." Or everyone would leave a message there, and they tend to meet him over at his pub. He only used the Sultan pub in Lewisham or the snooker hall in Lewisham, and they know he could get him at either place. So he was very clever in that way. He would only use a payphone, he never used the same payphone more than once. He would only use it, and he would use his phone cards. He used to change his cards regularly. He'd always window lead his windows. So if someone was in his car, he'd always and he was looking back, it was like he was cleaning his own evidence.
Now you got all these idiots on mobile phones.
And he was very clever. And my dad had, he's obviously through boxing, he was a legendary figure. So he had friends in Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, Scotland. He had friends all over. So if people went to him, he was never involved. I know towards the end of his life, a lot of people wanted him to get involved in the drug game. I know in the 80s, they was quite heavily involved in the cannabis. So, like they'd have a few, where we lived in Keston, I didn't realise, we moved to a place called Keston, it's near Biggin Hill. And we was on the direct path to where the Biggin Hill Airport was. And a few times my dad went to me, "Son," we had about 7-8 acres next to our house. And one day he went, "Son, do you mind coming and have a look?" Because it was full of bush. He went, "Son, I've got to look for something." He said, "I think someone's left something here." And it was what someone had dropped it from a plane. And it was a big bundle of cannabis. And my dad had given me a load of it. And I was going to, and then that's when I thought started getting into little bits and pieces. And my dad went, "Oh, son, what is it? Son, the puff's nothing. They don't really do nothing. They only smoke that. They make them happy." He said, "It's not like the other game and all that." But obviously, yeah, he was involved in the pot game in the 80s. I think that's how a lot of the criminals got their big money in the 80s. And we did have a very excessive, lavish lifestyle, which obviously now his same life being investigated, he would have been nicked, guaranteed.
Was there ever a time when it was close, like there was a crisis, he thought he was going to get sent down?
Yeah, when the Brighton bombing happened in the 80s, my dad's friend, a guy called Brian Whitty, he died, funny enough, a few months ago. Very close family friend. He was very big in Ireland. He was an Irish guy from Dublin. But because of obviously the IRA being very big at that time, all the Irish people who moved away from Ireland had to support them. They had to throw back, if they made lots of money over in England, they had to throw money to their cause. It was a well-known fact. A lot of places in Kilburn, they would have collection points on a Friday. I didn't know this. My dad used to tell me the stories. They would have people turn up from the IRA on a Friday, and these big businessmen or big Irish businessmen in London would have to contribute. Otherwise, they would be in serious consequences for their families back in Ireland. I didn't realise the consequences of this, Sean. And then obviously, at the time the Brighton bombing happened, my dad's friend Brian Whitty had the plans and was doing the refurbishment there. So what happened was, when the Brian bombing happened, my dad was actually he had a security firm which used to look after people, film stars.
Just for the Americans then, so the Brighton bombing, what happened?
So my dad got arrested for that. It was counter-terrorism. So they come through, my mum and dad's, we lived in Hayes in Kent at the time. We had a 3-bedroom semi-detached house. My mum's went to let the dogs out, the Yorkies at the back door. Next thing you know, she's got 4 geezers in ski masks with guns. She let them in, they've gone right through the house and everything. And my mum, they had a hiding place in the thing, but they stayed there all day long. My mum wasn't allowed to use the phone. Because my dad wasn't there, they couldn't, this is days before mobile phones, so they kept my mum, she wasn't allowed to use the phone. They had to wait. We and my sister weren't allowed to go to school. We had to wait all day long. And it was so, as a kid, you see this is why little things I suppose trigger off. My dad came home about 8:30 that night. And then my mum had managed somehow, they had a bag of money to put the money in the hiding place. And my dad's come straight, and all my dad's phone books, put them in the hiding place, which was like, they had a special panel which moved in the kitchen. The police went through the house and couldn't find it. When my dad's come, he went, look, I'll show you how dodgy I am, I'll show you my hiding place. My mum's going, you silly bastard. But they didn't even want to know. But they'd obviously, because it was such a high, obviously Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, just explain to the viewers, who was bombing who and what happened?
I don't particularly, it was the IRA, wasn't it? It was because it was a Conservative party there, wasn't it? It was Lord Tippett, and I know Margaret Thatcher was
They
there.
almost got Thatcher, didn't they?
Yeah, they almost got. That was after Thatcher, wasn't they, to make a political stance? But
Was that
obviously,
behind the
she was the Prime
Guildford?
Minister at the time.
she was the Prime Minister at the time. So
That's what
You know, the Guildford Free Pigeon bombing, was that around the same time?
I think
there was a lot of stuff to do with
Guildford 5.
Yeah.
But obviously because of
sorry,
my
right.
dad's links with the underworld, etc., and bits and pieces, that was the closest I think that had happened. Obviously, my dad, we got raided. 5 or 6 big raids we had at our houses, but nothing was ever taken. My dad was on bail for a bit of time. Nothing ever, never all fell apart. My dad would never say nothing. We had a great solicitor in the family called Paul Robinson at Gold Corns over in, he was at Walworth Road at the time, but he went on to Bromley. Nothing ever really stuck, really. So because my dad was he didn't put himself on offer like that. He was very, very clever at what he'd done. There was always, other people would do things. He got to a stage in life where he didn't have to do anything.
And how old were you at the first raid?
When the Brighton bombing happened, I would have been about 13, 14.
Were you not scared?
Yeah, of course he was, because my mum was screaming when she saw the men with the masks and they had all the machine guns, and we wasn't allowed to go to school. My mum wasn't allowed to answer the phone. It's because they wanted, obviously, my dad to get worried and come straight back. So, but my dad didn't finish till 8:30 that night, and he had something wrong with his back. He had a slip disc at the time, so he was ringing constantly to phone my mum and say, "Look, fuck, you know what it was? I need to." He was laying out on his car at one stage, but no, they was waiting for the house. But my dad left at 4:30 that morning, so they was there at 6 o'clock. Normal typical police raiders normally at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, it used to be, and they cornered off all the roads and then come through the house at 6 o'clock in the morning. But my mum was obviously, she was just opening the back door to let the dogs out, and then obviously they was stood there.
So while he was on remand, then how did that affect you?
No, he wasn't on remand. He was
Okay.
they reminded, because they didn't have no evidence on him, Sean. But what they wanted to do, because my dad was on the books as a security officer, but because of who my dad was, they found it very hard that why this gangland legend was a security officer working for an Irishman who contributed towards the IRA and had the contract to do the refurbishment on the Grand Hotel in Brighton. And obviously at that time, my dad's friend was Georgie Walker, who was. He was a gangland minder for Billy Hill. He started Spud for You in the 60s, earned loads of money and become a billionaire. Then he lost it all, went over to Russia and was working with some undesirables in Russia. And obviously with my dad's friends being these people in Brighton, and there was another guy, Nicholas von Houtstruten, you know, the slum landlord who was friends with Mugabe. You throw all these names into the mix, and obviously the people my dad knew, it didn't look good. So obviously they wanted to speak to him, and they considered him to be a big suspect at the time, but obviously he wasn't. And the Irishman my dad knew, he later went on to go to prison for giving Mohammed Al Fayed a backhander at Harrods. And then he got Brian Whitty's name was, he had a business called Tandata in London and gave Mohammed Al Fayed a backhander. Like, he come on top, Mohammed Al Fayed grassed him straight up, and he got 3.5 years.
Wow.
But my mum looked after his family, and it was quite funny. He was so skint, he lost everything. But he had a picture in his house he bought off an old cat burglar. They sent it to Sotheby's. The picture was worth nothing, but the frame was worth £32,000. But in the days, it was just a nice little story. But we knew, obviously, my dad was involved with Lord Bristol, the Queen's, another relation of the Queen's.
In what way?
My dad's friend, a guy called Bruce Smith, he was his personal assistant. Well, he used to do everything for Lord Bristol. Lord Bristol wanted all his artwork stolen once, but he'd already done it and claimed on the insurance. And the artworks they went for, they had an expert there. And he said, no, these have all been replicated anyway. so it was like, and he was banned on the coke and the heroin. So they had people obviously doing what they was doing. But no, it's Bruce has gave me some great anecdotes and stories for my dad's book and told me some great stories. So,
what about Charles Bronson?
Charlie Bronson. I mean, I've stayed. Charlie Bronson wrote to me when I was in prison because he was away with my Uncle Fred, and obviously, when I was in the Wolds up in near York, near Hull. It's in a place called Brough. I was away with Charlie's best mate called Jerry Johnson. He was called Jerry the Bear. And Charlie Bronson's got a book called Legends. And funny enough, one of my friends, he shot a guy, Cliff Moody. He's from Newcastle. He messaged me yesterday on Facebook and said, "How you going, legend? One legend to another." And it's quite funny, you know, like people you met, Sean. And I would like to see Cliff because we had some funny times in prison together. But no, Charlie is another one. I think he hasn't done himself any favours. I think he will remain in prison. I think it's another political case. I think he's got so much notoriety. I think it's like when they let Reg out. Reg was out for 3 days and he died at the townhouse in Norfolk. I went to see Reg there. I was close with Reg, but then Reg was a fantasist. He'd spent so long in jail, Jen. He was like, he used to phone up, go, "Jim, I've got you a world title fight." I thought, "Reg, I've not even had a single fight yet." And he's like, to promising me a world title fight. And my dad went, "Listen, he wants you up there to..." And then when I went on the visit with him once, he went to his wife, Roberta. He went, "Oh, can you go and get an ice cream?" And he's like, touched me leg. And I was like, yeah, it wasn't the touch of the leg, like, you know, like someone might go like that, Sean. And then he went to me on the phone that night. He went, I got back really late. Funny enough, I was with the Page 3 girl, Debbie Ashby. She dropped me off. And we got back, and then he phoned. He went, "Jim, it's Reg," because he was deaf in one ear. He went, "Can you send me a picture of you in some shorts?" And I went, "Oh, what boxing shorts?" My cousin was listening on the phone. He went, "Have you got any of you in Speedos?" I thought, for fuck's sake. So my cousin went, "Listen, he's after your arse." I went, "Oh, for fuck's sake." And then a few weeks later, he phoned me. This was in '97. He went, "Jim, can you meet a friend of mine in Victoria?" Now, with the craze and the name, you think. So he phoned me. His phone card went, it was 3 units. He said, "I've only got 3 units left." I was on a mobile. He went, "Hang on a minute, I'll get another." He said, "I've got 10 more units." And he went, 2 seconds. He said, "Can you meet my mate in Victoria? He's waiting for you, a good bit of business for you." I went like that. So I've gone down to Victoria now. I'm thinking, I was 2 stops on a train from Bromley. As I got to Victoria, I'm looking around. I'm looking for someone like me dad in a trilby coat, flat nose, and like Crombie and a trilby hat. And I've looked, and there's this geezer went, "You, Jim?" I went, "Yeah." He was like a kid. He was in like a tracksuit. It was hanging over the end of his trainers. There was all holes and tears in it. And he went, "Oh, I'm Reggie's boyfriend." And I went, "What? He went, "Yeah, I'm Paul Marcus." His real name was Paul Henry. And he was Reggie's boyfriend. And he went, "Reg said I can come and stay with you." I went, "Oh, 2 seconds, mate." I said, "Do you mind just staying there?" I walked off. Reg phoned back up because I couldn't phone him because he was on the phone card in prison. I went, "Reg, please, what are you?" He went, "Oh, Jim, can he stay?" I went, No. Put the phone down. I thought, and in the end, we made up a few weeks later. But Reg, that was them. I listened to what my dad said. They was out to use anyone they could, Sean, make themselves look good. They was getting the charity money when they then distributed it between themselves. There was no honour amongst thieves. And that's when I realised that everything my dad said was right. He said, "Son, there's no value around them."
How did you meet Chet Sandhu?
I met Chet through Brian Charrington. Brian's a good friend of mine. Brian's dad got arrested, didn't he, with Curtis Warren years ago. Met Chet at the Rockstar party. Yeah, Chet's a nice guy.
He's great.
And his book, Self-Made Jews Paid.
Sorry?
Check it out. Check his book out. Self-Made Jews Paid.
Oh, is his new one out, yeah?
Yeah.
Of course. No, Chet's a nice guy. Yeah, we've been to a few parties and that, had a few good times.
He's very eccentric.
Yeah.
He's great.
No, but listen, it's like Blink. Blink's a very good friend of mine. I like Blink. Blink's a real good friend. And obviously, have you done one with Ray Hill yet?
We've done one with Ray, yeah. We're going to do a second one.
Well, Ray was, because I didn't mention Ray on my first one, because sometimes you do, when you're going along, but Ray was one of my dad's enforcers in the 80s. In the early 80s, my dad was Ray's boxing trainer and obviously looked after Ray, but they'd done a lot of enforcer work for the Richardsons, yeah. But Ray was a good friend of my dad's and a big enforcer for him.
Still pack a punch, can't he?
74 years old, still believes going to fight Lenny McLean. Anyone who's going to fight Lenny McLean got to have a fight, haven't they? Yeah. But I think my dad and Roy Shaw was beating Ray up in the ring one day, and Ray was telling me the story. He said, and then my dad's gone, stop it. And then Roy Shaw's like had words with me dad, and my dad went, "What, do you fucking want it?" And Roy sort of My dad was one of these people. Once he was the real deal. That's why his book had to be called The Real Deal.
Yeah. When did you start writing that?
I started writing it about a year ago, but I've got all the paperwork there. I've given a lot of stuff to Julie. Julie said we're going to incorporate it into like through someone else. So a lot of my dad's friends would tell their stories, and obviously we get factual stuff, a lot of the boxing history, and put it all together in a book. But what I'm going to do, Sean, is donate all the proceeds to dementia.
That's really good.
Because it cleans up my past. It lets people know I'm not a money grabber. I don't need to. I've got my own money, and also I want to do. My dad would have wanted to give something back. And I know all the time he spent in the hospital, in the nursing home, is giving something back. And dementia is something which is very close to my heart.
And is it causing a lot of nostalgia?
Do you know what it is? When I hear people, I've got a lot of friends on Facebook, and you see people going through stuff with their parents with dementia. It's very upsetting because I saw it tear my mum. It killed my mum. It did. It was 4 years of misery for my mum, and then the next 5 years, she missed my dad terribly. They used to sit indoors, have an Indian curry. They'd go out for nice meals, go on a holiday, and she was missing her soulmate. And they loved their dogs, and my dad was an animal lover. He loved dogs, and I've took all the best things from my mum and dad, and now I'm using them rightly and putting them in the right way.
Amazing.
Something else you give back. There's so many people out there struggling with drug problems.
Do
you had a heavy drug problem.
Even do you know something now, Sean? I obviously back in the day when I'd done it about yourself, but in the early 90s, late 80s, it was clean. It was still bad because drugs is bad.
I was doing the same weight dubs as you.
Yeah, do you know, no, 91.
Yeah.
You had half of them. You loved the world. You would fall. You could sit there. And, you just loved. You could be put in with a firm of you hated, and it was a word they should give those out on the national health because it would stop all this trouble.
All the
now.
hooliganism
Look at all
and
these
everything.
fights now. Yeah. But now the drugs, I believe, have got so chemicalised.
Yep.
And I believe the stuff what they're putting in the drugs is sending people crazy. I mean, I take the odd bit of coke if I'm out drinking. I might have a little pinch, very, very rare, very far and few between. But it's just not the same for me. My enjoyment is a nice bottle of wine, good food, and some sweets later at the end of the night.
You got proper sweet tooth, haven't you?
Properly. Me and my girlfriend, we went up to that Wakey Wines the other day. Have you seen it on TikTok? The guy,
what's it called?
He calls himself Wakey Wines. He sells these prime drinks at an extortionate price of like 30 odd quid and these cold candy. But we went up there the other day and he's caught us on video and he's put us all. It's gone all viral everywhere. My girlfriend went, "Thanks a lot for that." Fucking hell, it's like, is she looking for it now? Like,
Shout out.
yeah. Shout out to my page. Yeah.
So the people who are struggling with drug problems, Jimmy, they're wondering how you managed to start. What information could you give them?
Do you know something? I'd say go and get a 9-to-5 job. Forget about these people who you're doing these drugs with. Go. Don't be frightened to ask for help. Go and do you know what it is? It's about. I'm a big believer in it's the people you hang around with, Sean. If you hang around with 5 arseholes, you become the 6th arsehole. If you hang around with 5 millionaires, hopefully you become the 6th millionaire. But it's being around the right people.
So for you, when did it change from the glitz and the glamour to the dark side of drug use?
I think I was still using up until when my mum was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I still went the odd night, but you know, I was around people I thought were my friends, Sean, and they weren't my friends. They were using me because I was a good money getter. I don't have to pay to go in a lot of places. I get lapped up a lot where I go, and they know these aren't real people. Where my girlfriend's with me through thick and thin. If I have a bad day, she's there to pick me up. She's such a young girl, but she's it's like me and my mum and dad have met again because my dad was with someone 20 years younger. She's the boss. She's the governor in our relationship, and I love her to bits.
How did you guys meet?
How did we meet? We met in Mayfair a year ago on Saturday. We met at the Mayfair Hotel, and she hated me. I'd love to bring her in. She was like, she hated me. But do you know what it is? She used to come over to my mum's, and obviously I'd lost my mum. She was so good for me. But obviously we'd go out partying and all that. But she's so grown up for her age. She was sort of run away from home when she was young. She's fended for herself. She's all right. She's hopefully going into the world of television now. She will be big. She's like a young Anna Nicole, but a lot better looking.
Would you say, Jimmy, you're the happiest you've ever been in your life?
The totally happiest, Sean. Do you know what it is? But Paige is down to that. Without Paige, if I drop dead now, I'd say she's made my life. She's been the cherry on top of the cake. She's made me. She's made me want to change my life. I want to help other people as well, Sean. Now, so for me, it's about. I love Paige to bits, and we've just got this great. I just want to be with her all the time.
Is that melting your heart?
It's a
He's got
lovely,
an ice heart,
It's a lovely
honestly.
note.
No, I know. I'm
Lovely
totally
note.
madly in love.
Yeah,
And do you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
The love of a good woman. It's like what my
Definitely.
mum said. You know, it's behind every good man is a great woman.
More important
Amen.
than all that money and
Amen.
the drugs and everything else.
No, it doesn't mean. Do you know what I'm saying? Money means nothing when you're in love because you work together as a team and it distributes itself. If you work hard, my mum always said, you work hard, it comes to you.
So tell us about your journey on YouTube, because Liam Galvin is one of our cameramen.
Yeah, Liam Galvin. I met Liam in my girlfriend. She's gonna laugh. I would love her to Paige. I would love to get her in. But she says to me, "You look like fucking Harry Potter on that fucking interview." Because I had like hair. She's laughing. She said, "You look like bloody Harry Potter. You look terrible." She went, "You look so much better now." I said, "That's 20 years ago." And no, so I done that because obviously I've got extensive like knowledge of the underworld. But
How did you and Liam connect?
Yeah.
we connected through. He was with. It was on a Frankie Fraser program he was doing, and I think he connected me through somebody, and we met up the Clink Jail in London. I'd done the interview, but I wasn't because my dad said, "Oh, you can't be doing interviews on telly and all that." Because this was when my dad was never one about books, and then Tony Thompson, obviously, his introduction to get me sort of a bit famous was appearing in his book, which was called Gangster, Journey into the Heart of the British Underworld. On page 1 is Jimmy Tippett Jr. opens the door. So that book, 2003, catapulted me into sort of that world. Then obviously my book done really, really well. I've done a lot of radio, and obviously I've done with Livy Haydock on Paul Massey on his podcast on the Salford. He's like a Salford legend.
Yeah, we've done Paul Massey's audio, but his sister.
Yeah,
his
I was on
sister,
his. With Livy Haydock, I'd done his podcast. I was featured on that, and then obviously I went on to Liquid Bullets, and obviously we got nearly 1 million views.
So you're
No.
mates with the guy behind Liquid Bullet.
No, do you know what it was? I know they come from my area.
I see.
But what happened was,
the concrete jungle.
yeah, Paul Stockton, who was one of my dad's fighters, he was featured on with them. And obviously then Paul said to me, "Oh, you should do a podcast, Jim. You're a good talker. You should do it." And I was like, "No, I'm not sure. And I saw everyone else's. Ray Hill said to me, "Jim, do a podcast. You'll come across really good." And then obviously, then they got hold of me a few weeks ago. I was suffering really bad with COVID. First time I've ever had COVID. During COVID lockdown, I was out partying every weekend. I was fucking enjoying myself everywhere. And I actually had it really, really bad. And then he said, "Oh, look, I'm coming up to see you up north." And he came up and we cracked on. And obviously my friend Luke, he's put a few on his channel on the TikTok, and they're like nearly 1 million views. And it's like now I've had film directors, film producers all coming out of woodwork, all wanting to put me in things.
Would you say going on YouTube and TikTok is steering your life in a new direction?
Totally. I believe social media, if you use it rightly, Sean, it's the best thing out there.
100%.
But you've got to use it right. And obviously, you're going to get bad comments. But then I said to somebody else, if someone can spend 3 or 4 minutes to write a bad comment, you've obviously, you've done something right. Because I think the word, it's like with Dave Courtney, you see a lot of bad comments with Dave. But I think that's, if someone's got that time to write that comment, you're doing something right.
And it's
Yep.
all of those bad comments, if they're watching the trolls, that send Dave's videos viral. Because
Course
all
it is.
YouTube looks at is
Exactly.
engagement. It doesn't care if it's bad
Of course
or
it
good.
does. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the trolls just fuel the views for Dave.
Of course, that's good then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm starting to enjoy the trolls now.
No, do you know what it is? I don't read the comments because someone said to me, "Don't bother reading the
No.
comments," because you know, say, Sean, you're always going to have haters, but look, I just got to keep carrying on doing what I'm doing. If I make my girlfriend smile at the end of the day, we enjoy good food. It's all about being able to eat a good dinner at the end of the day. If you have a good food and you put your head down at night, that you got through the day, haven't you?
So you're hoping to get a film out?
I've been offered a few bits and pieces. I'm not me personally on my film, with my dad's film. They basically want to do a film on my dad. We've had a lot of, my dad's friend was a guy called John Daly. I don't know if you remember John Daly. He was a famous boxing manager. He invested money in the Rumble in the Jungle with George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. He put the money up. He also put the money up for Casper the Ghost, and he was a film producer and Platoon. So his family were really, really big in Hollywood. He was with Richard Hemmings. Is it Richard Hemmings, the famous film director? So they done Hemdale Film Production Company, but then John Daly died of a heart attack quite a few years ago. So what happened was the family, he's got sons and daughters. They've all now got a big studio in California. So Donald Sutherland, my dad's friend, has always said there should be a film out with your dad, because he knows stories about my dad which can be told in time. I'll maybe come back, Sean, and we'll go through these, but on a different subject. But no, there's a lot of stories out there which people without implicating my parents now, can come out, because they've both been a few years dead now. My mum's been dead a year, my dad's been dead like 6 years, and there's a lot of stories which they don't want to do a film on my dad. So obviously, me being a son, we'll put that together.
So we've heard all these exciting stories, Jimmy. What's your average day in your life like now?
Well, Paige. It's all about Paige. Whenever we rise, we go out for lovely meals. We've been in London all weekend. We went to Winter Wonderland. We went shopping. She got her Christian Louboutins. She's a self-made girl herself. She's got her own money. And we went out to Gordon Ramsay's yesterday with a friend of ours who played. He's a lead guitarist in a group called The Business. His friend Gary Bushell has got obviously Paige her TV part as a glamorous assistant. So no, we're just enjoying life and making the most of it.
And you like living in the north?
No, do you know what it was? Paige is in London, so now I'm back to London. I'm realising there's no good restaurants in the north. Where I am, you've got in Manchester, Leeds, you haven't got that many. Where in London, you're just spoilt for choice. And where sometimes when she's out with her friends, she go, she's been in that new one in Mayfair with all the Damien Hirst statues. She said the other day, she went, she was out, and I went, God. And then you realise that there's so much more in London.
So you're moving back?
Sorry,
you moving back?
I want to buy a house. I don't want to say over here. But I'm buying a house in a beautiful part of the north, which is, well, I can say it's near York, and it's a beautiful place. That's where I want our main residence to be, and obviously stay for London work purposes. I've been offered a potential job in a soap on telly with a 6-month contract, so that's pending another screen test and contract. But no, that's looking good. But it's 2 days a week in Elstree Studios.
Is it quite a well-known soap?
Yeah, very well-known soap. Yeah,
I think I know what
you're but I can't see the NDA, so I can't. But obviously, I can say that much.
I can think of
so no, there's a part. There's a good part there. It's not the best part. My girlfriend and a few friends have said, "Oh, you want to be careful taking a part." But then it's something I would like to go in that direction. I will take every opportunity if it's straight and you get paid a legitimate pound note at the end of the day. I'm willing to take it.
Go for it.
How come you settled in Leeds? Because that's where your court cases and your alleged serious crimes were.
I had a lot of friends there, and I thought, no, I like it up there. But do you know what it is now? But I've spent more time in London now, so I've got my residence there. But I'm a bit bored there, Sean. I don't go drinking. If I go out, I'll go drinking in London. I love London, but now Paige has pulling me back to London.
There's a lot more action in the south, isn't there? That's why I moved.
London's lovely. Yeah. Surrey's lovely as well. I mean, I've been all over Surrey, East Shore, and I lived in Brighton. Brighton was fun.
Yeah.
But then obviously, there was a few people there, absolute wrong-uns there, who set me up.
Really?
There was a guy called Gareth, horrible bastard he was. He was a barber who was an ex-criminal, but he grassed this other guy called Buster, they set me up basically on this robbery, which didn't happen, but they gave the police the information to get what they'd done. Basically, they got a guy to do a statement to get me recalled to jail, to get me stabbed up in the jail. But when
stabbed up in the jail?
No, so what happened was, Sean, when they grasped me, so this Buster got the guy called Eric, because it's on the paperwork, I'm not saying anything out of school. He grasped me, done a statement saying I went into the club with a handgun, held it to his head with a big black guy and took 60,000 out of the safe. But we'd been involved in some business, which the police knew about. We'd been pictured in Hatton Garden on a certain couple of occasions where bags were swapped over. No drugs, but there was something going on. The police knew that, but obviously I can't disclose that. But obviously then they'd done a statement to say that I robbed the club on the 27th of November. But I was with a friend called Paul Anderson, who's a big property developer and a very well-known businessman in the north of England. He went round when I got arrested and got all the statements from the people we'd been with, done a statement himself, all the CCTV, so the police dropped the robbery charge. But this Gareth had notified to somebody to tell the police that I was in York on that night. So they then cell-sighted my phone there. They knew where I was staying through Gareth. So he was a dirty little grass. Me and Paige split up about 3 months ago. We'd had a bit of a to-do. I'd done something silly, and we split up for a few weeks. He tried to message her and say all sorts of shit and tried to get into her. No. Absolute vile creature. Sure, he's the sort of person who'd go out and pick up a half-empty bottle of beer rather than buy one himself. Absolute dregs of society. But these are the mugs I had round me, Sean. So now I only have good people in my life now. But obviously then I went back to prison for 4 months, but then I got not guilty, come out on parole, served the rest of my sentence.
And you said they tried to stab you up in there?
No, they tried to. What they done, because Brighton was local to them, they tried to get me in Lewis jail to then pay some smackers to do me up. So when I got in there, Sean, I knew this was going to go on, so I stayed down the block. I stayed down and I said, look, I want to be moved out. I refused to be moved onto location. They went to me, what do you mean? So I had to sit in front of the governor for a nicking, and I said, listen, you must know what's gone on. And the governor's like, no, you got. I said, no, but I'll tell you what, I'm refusing to move me out of this jail. Move me out of this jail. You can move me out of this jail. They moved me to Rochester. So I got moved to Rochester jail. But then they were still trying to do things. But I'm a clever enough guy, Sean. I know prison is like, once you got it's a horrible, horrible place.
And they were still trying to do things.
Still trying to send things to put money up for me in Rochester. But when I got out, put a hit on me. But when I got out, Jen, I went back to Brighton on my own. with a pair of gloves on, which I walked round, made myself, I logged in on every one of the places they used to go, and they was never seen. Then the police contacted me to say that they was prosecuting them for, what's the word, when you...
Conspiracy.
Which, perverting the course of justice. They said, we need you to do a statement. I said, I'm not doing a statement. I said, what do you mean? I went, they said, well, then they're going to get off of it scot-free. I said, well, you've got their phones. You've downloaded their phones. You know what they was doing. I said, but I'm not going to be the same person as them. I said, I'm better than that. I said, why would I help you? You knew that I was nowhere on that robbery, but you was smirking at me. You took my Rolex off me. You took my ring off me because you know I was under proceeds. You know I was under proceeds of crime. I said, you didn't help me out. So why would I want to help you? He said, but they put you in jail. I said, no, you put me in jail with their help. I said, so why would I help you with them to put them in jail? I said, listen, he said, well, if you go down, so when I went to Brighton, this buster had contacted the police to say I was looking for him and he was in fear of his life. So where he lived on the marina, they went and put cameras up for me. So when I was going to Brighton, so these people, they're not hard, they're not nothing. I was going down Brighton regular. I went down with Paige one day. I'm not frightened of these people, and I if push comes to shove, I'll do what I've got to do. But
and when it turns around on them, they always go running to the police.
Of course they do, Sean. So this is when I realised how powerful my name is, and I've got a lot of powerful friends around me who people don't know about, who are still connected to my dad's legacy. I've got a friend of mine in Essex who's very powerful, connected to every gangster family throughout the UK, and I have meetings with him regularly, and I know that if there's a problem, I make a phone call, it's dealt with. He sits down for the major families in the UK, and I know that I'm one of his favourite boys, and he looks up to my dad still.
Good.
So, but I don't want to go down that route, Sean. I'm happy to do a straight pound note, tell my stories, and go forward in life.
And hopefully you get that part on the soap. If
I get that, do you know what it is? I've literally, it has been offered to me. I've got to go back this week, and I'm involved in a Netflix documentary as well with my family, which I'm meeting the producers on Friday. So it's a really exciting, all through these podcasts.
It's all kicking off.
You would not believe, Sean, what comes through to you.
It opens the door, doesn't it? And just you don't know who's going to come through that door.
I've got film producers, Netflix, and it's like where I live is a Netflix producer, there's brain surgeons. I'm meeting people all the time. And obviously I go up to Media City a lot. I've got friends. A friend of mine is the main producer for Coronation Street up there. And all my friends are actors. Yeah. But no, and obviously now I'm 51 and my confidence is booming. And I wasn't like this in my 20s. And now I feel this would be the right time for me to go into television or to do something. I would love to go into journalism as well. I'm fascinated by it.
Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers watching this, Jimmy?
No, I've had a great time, Sean. I feel it's nice. Very, it's a euphoric moment, isn't it? It brings nice.
It's gone like that, hasn't it?
You know, and I've really enjoyed it. No, it's nice.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
This is my favourite one so far.
Thank you.
No, I mean it. No, because you've let me talk, but you've also guided me on a few things. Yeah,
you're so high energy and you're so riveting, and
thank you.
We're just on the edge of it. I mean, it's been almost 2 hours.
Bloody
hell! She's like,
she's like, I love that little laugh.
So if you've got questions for Jimmy, then please put them down in the comments. Let us know what you thought about this podcast. So the viewers, Jimmy, they quite often like to reach out to you on your socials. Where are you on your socials?
I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I can be contacted that way. So.
All are just under your name, are they?
All under my name, yeah. I think on TikTok it's official Jimmy Tippett. It's official Jimmy Tippett on Instagram and Jimmy Tippett on Facebook.
So you don't like people contacting you to get in touch?
People can contact. Yeah, anyone can contact me. I'm happy to accept a message from anybody.
Cool.
So all of Jimmy's links will be in the description box below this video. Put questions for him in the comments. If Jimmy feels like coming back and answering your questions, we will be honoured and privileged for him to do so. But we hope you've enjoyed this as much as us.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Thank you. Cheers.
Brilliant.
Cheers.